Chapter 1257. Just as Ji Tianqing had expected, the blood god wasn't killed on the spot. As a fiend that was between a devil and a ghost, it was special and powerful. It could be said to be indestructible. Even though Tai's golden dragon breath had hit it and Ji Tianqing's most powerful sword attack had hit it. After it had been blasted into thousands of strands of black qi, it could still gather in the water and quickly condense into a cloud of black mist. However, the blood god didn't know that Ji Tianqing knew the blood god very well and had killed a blood god with his own hands. The moment it reformed its body, Ji Tianqing, who had been accumulating power, suddenly opened the third eye on his forehead. Thunder spiritual eye. Thunder. As he yelled, the golden eye on his forehead released endless thunder power. It gathered into a blue beam of thunder and struck the blood god. The blood god had just reformed its body and wasn't prepared for Ji Tianqing's attack, so it was immediately hit. Boom! Amidst a deafening explosion, the 10-meter-long pillar of lightning struck the blood god with devastating power. At that moment, the dark sea within dozens of miles was illuminated by the dazzling thunder. The blood god's sun was also shrouded by the lightning. The dense black mist quickly collapsed and dissipated under the violent lightning power. Even though they were deep in the sea and the water weakened the power of the thunder, the blood god was still weak. However, the blood god's sun was weak to begin with. He had just reformed his body, so his defense wasn't strong. Ji Tianqing released all the lightning energy stored in his Dharma eye, leaving not a single drop behind. The terrifying power was enough to kill it on the spot. The loud sound echoed in the canyon. The blue lightning flashed crazily in the water and didn't disappear until 10 seconds later. Everything went back to normal after 10 seconds. The lightning disappeared, and so did the extremely dense pitch-black demonic fog. The blood god that had created all kinds of disasters and killed tens of millions of people of the water race was also turned into ashes. The canyon gradually regained its tranquility. Tai stood at the bottom of the sea and stared at the canyon with his eyes wide open. He was shocked and couldn't believe it. Even the Ox-Head Demon Commander, Yun Yao and Black Dragon, who were fighting not far away, stopped fighting. Everyone looked at the empty sea and saw the blood god disappear on the spot. They were all dumbfounded. No one could believe that the blood god, who was as powerful as an overlord at the 5th level of the soul refining realm, had been killed by Ji Tianqing in one attack. It was definitely a miracle. Only Ji Tianqing knew that he had only been able to kill the blood god because of luck. Before he had arrived at the canyon, the blood god had been fighting with Tai and Dragon Abyss had used a lot of its energy. Plus, he and Tai had both used their ultimate moves to injure the blood god and exhaust him. Most importantly, the Thunder Divine Power was the best power to counter power. Because of this, he was able to kill the blood god with a bolt of lightning at the most appropriate time. While everyone was still in a daze, Ji Tianqing was still clear-headed and calm. He didn't hesitate at all. He held the black sword of Burial of Heaven and charged at the Ox-Head Demon Commander. He swung his sword and used his ultimate sword technique. Stab sword. He held the broken sword in his hand and thrust it forward. A cold light that had been condensed to the limit flashed in the sea for a moment. When the Ox-Head Demon Commander came back to his senses, his expression changed drastically as he retreated in fear. The blood god was dead and he had lost his biggest support. Of course, he didn't want to fight anymore. However, as soon as he retreated 100 feet away, the dazzling cold light pierced through his protective magic power and armor and exploded in his chest. Boom! A loud, muffled sound erupted and reverberated throughout the canyon, causing everything within 100 miles to tremble incessantly. The dazzling cold light of the sword illuminated an area of 100 miles. It was like a sun at the bottom of the sea, making people unable to open their eyes. As for the Ox-Head Demon Commander, who was at the 4th level of the soul-tempering realm, he had already been crushed by the power of the sword. His muscular body and powerful divine soul had been shattered by the sword light. The earth-shattering sound lasted for a long time before it disappeared. After a dozen breaths of time, the canyon regained its peace, and the battle finally came to an end. Everyone looked at Ji Tianqing, their eyes filled with awe. Of course, other than shock, the eyes of the three surviving elite demon kings were also filled with endless fear. In their minds, the Ox-Head Demon Commander and the Blood God were invincible. They could wipe out the East Sea and kill billions of people. But their goal and ambition had just started. They were defeated before they could achieve it. The Ox-Head Demon Commander and the Blood God had both died in this canyon. Even though they had seen the whole process with their own eyes, they still felt like they were dreaming. It was too unreal. At this moment, Yin Yao and the Black Dragon regained their senses and immediately used their ultimate techniques to kill the three elite demon kings. The battle was over. The crisis of the East Sea had been resolved. Tai Yi looked at Ji Tianqing deeply and gave him a thumbs up. He said with a complicated expression, "Tianqing, you are now unparalleled in the world. Today, you have helped us kill the Blood God and resolved the crisis of the East Sea. The Imperial Court of the Sea will remember your kindness forever." Ji Tianqing nodded calmly and said, "Let's not talk about this. Let's take a look at Long Yuan's injuries first." As he said that, he flew towards Long Yuan. Tai Yi also came back to his senses. He quickly swam to Long Yuan's side through the dark sea. Long Yuan was still lying in the ruins at the bottom of the sea. His 1,000-meter-long dragon body had turned into human form. He was lying on a pile of rubble. Blood was flowing out of his body and he was twitching. His body was covered in a layer of black fog. His divine soul was very weak. His eyes were closed and he was on the verge of death. Tai Yi was worried when he saw his serious injuries. He asked, "Long Yuan, how are your injuries? Are you able to hold on?" Long Yuan tried his best to open his eyes. He looked at Tai Yi and said weakly, "Your Highness, Long Yuan can't protect you anymore. Please take care of yourself, Your Highness." Tai Yi frowned and said worriedly, "Long Yuan, you don't have to say too much. I will take you back to the Imperial Court now and heal you. You have been the commander of the Imperial Court's guards since I was young. You have been protecting me with your life all these years. I will not let you die like this." Ji Tianqing frowned and said, "Tai Yi, it's too late to bring him back to the Imperial Court to heal. Let me try. Maybe I can save him." Long Yuan shook his head and said weakly, "Your Highness, there's no need. My divine soul has been shattered. Even if the gods are here, there's nothing they can do." Chapter 1258. Long Yuan was obviously going to say his last words. Ji Tianqing and Tai Yi looked confused. They could not guess why he would say his last words to the Black Dragon. However, Ji Tianqing did not hesitate. He quickly sent a telepathic message to the Black Dragon to Long Yuan's side. The Black Dragon approached Long Yuan and said in a low voice, "Senior Long Yuan, thank you for teaching me. If you have any regrets or unfinished business, please tell me." Long Yuan turned to look at him. His eyes gradually became clear and bright. He said solemnly, "Black Dragon, with your current status, I dare not call you senior anymore. You have awakened the divine beast bloodline and become a divine beast Black Dragon. You are different from us scaled dragons. In the future, you are destined to shine and shock the world. My soul has been shattered. I am destined to die. However, I have cultivated hard for 800 years in this life. I have accumulated countless powers and dragon breath. If I die like this, I will not be willing. I am fated to be with you. Before I die, I will pass on all the remaining powers and dragon breath in this body to you." Hearing his words, Ji Tianqing, Tai Yi, and the others came to a realization. They all showed a complicated expression. The Black Dragon shook his head and quickly said, "Senior Long Yuan, how can this be? Long Yuan looked at him with a determined gaze. This is my last wish. Please fulfill it. Don't make me regret it. No, that is not what I mean. The black dragon quickly shook his head and explained, I have done nothing for you. I dare not accept your gift. You have to accept it even if you can't. Long Yuan growled and said stubbornly, it is my honor to teach you what's left of my magic power and dragon breath. You have inherited my powers, which means you have inherited my will. In the future, you must kill all the demons invading the East Sea and get rid of evil for the people. The black dragon fell silent. He looked at him with a complicated gaze. He could not refuse again. Long Yuan slowly closed his eyes and sat up with all his strength. He looked at the black dragon and said in a serious tone, Black dragon, don't hesitate. Accept my power. As he said that, he waved his palms and formed a spell seal. His body surged with a thick black light and a powerful aura. At this moment, Long Yuan regained the power of a spirit-refining cultivator. It was as if he had never been injured. But everyone present knew that this was the final radiance of the setting sun, and also the final moment of Long Yuan's life. The black dragon did not refuse. He twisted his mountain-like dragon body and quickly curled into a black ball of light, hovering in the valley. The black light ball enveloped Long Yuan, and a vast amount of magic power and dragon breath gushed out of Long Yuan's palms, pouring into the black light ball without any reservation. The seabed within a radius of dozens of miles immediately surged with undercurrents and surging waves, enveloped by an invisible aura. Ji Tianqing, Tai, and the others watched this scene with complicated expressions. They all waited silently. Long Yuan's decision, his righteousness and generosity, caused everyone to feel deep veneration. Time passed quietly. The black ball of light within a radius of 100 feet gradually stopped rotating, and the five-colored spiritual light also gradually dimmed. Whoosh! The black ball of light expanded. Soon, it turned into a black dragon 1,000 meters long. It regained its original appearance. The undercurrent at the bottom of the sea gradually calmed down. Everyone looked at the ruins. They saw a black dragon 1,000 meters long lying quietly at the bottom of the sea. The black dragon was covered in wounds. His life force was still cut off. He had no aura. It was Long Yuan, who had just passed away. Clearly, he had no regrets after passing his life's power and dragon's breath to the black dragon. He died on the spot. After he died, he could no longer maintain his human form. He revealed his true form. Everyone looked at Long Yuan's corpse. They mourned with heavy hearts. The black dragon's eyes flashed with determination. He said in a low and solemn voice, Senior Long Yuan, I will always remember your last wish. I will do my best to kill the demons. Tai walked to Long Yuan's corpse. Long Yuan, he said in a serious voice, you served the imperial court when you were alive. You were loyal and devoted. Today, you died in the disaster. You didn't retreat until the last moment. You are the pride of the Black Dragon race and the Imperial Court. I will take your corpse back to the Imperial Court and announce your death to the East Sea. I will bury you in the Sky Dragon tomb for future generations to mourn. Then, he clenched his left fist and punched his chest. He saluted Long Yuan's corpse. Ji Tianqing, Yin Yao, and the others also bowed solemnly. They paid their last respects to Long Yuan. After a while, Tai calmed down. Everyone, the dead are gone. Dying on the battlefield is the pride and destiny of the dragon race. There is no need to be sad. Although the blood god is dead, the disaster is not over. We still need to be strong to save the tens of millions of people. He ordered 4 Sky Origin Realm generals to escort Long Yuan's corpse back to the Imperial Court. He personally returned to the refugee camp in the canyon and led many soldiers to save the survivors. When everyone returned to the canyon, they saw the miserable scene in the refugee camp. It made their scalps tingle. The bottom of the sea, which stretched for 2,000 miles, was covered in white bones. The seawater had turned dark red. Wisps of blood chi gathered into a large blood mist that enveloped the entire refugee camp. The blood god and the strong demons were all dead. No one could devour the blood mist. The area within 2,000 miles was like a blood purgatory. Tens of millions of people of the water race had died tragically in the refugee camp, turning into mountains of white bones. The tens of millions of people who had survived hid in the defense formation in fear and despair. They trembled and screamed. Tai and the soldiers of the Water Clan were infuriated to see so many civilians die. Their hearts were filled with overwhelming hatred. Although the blood god and the strong demons were dead, the refugee camp was still filled with a large amount of poisonous black water. If left alone, the poisonous black water would last for at least half a month before it was diluted. But even if Tai wanted to get rid of the poison, there was nothing he could do. Seeing that he was troubled, Ji Tianqing said, "Tai, take the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. Patrol the canyon and search for the survivors. Leave the poison in this area to me. It will be dealt with quickly." Tai glanced at him and nodded in agreement. Then, Tai took the soldiers to search for the survivors. Ji Tianqing stood in the refugee camp. He cast a spell with a serious expression. He activated the power of the heaven-mending orb and formed a huge whirlpool of white light. The whirlpool, which was 10 meters wide, floated in the canyon and crazily devoured the poisonous black water in all directions. The terrifyingly powerful poisonous black water entered the heaven-mending orb after being swallowed into the whirlpool. Ji Tianqing cast a spell for 24 hours. It took him an entire day to completely devour the poisonous black water in the canyon. Chapter 1259. Ji Tianqing swallowed the last of the poisonous black water before ending the spell. He had used up a lot of his magic power and was mentally exhausted. The heaven-mending orb in his mind was also faintly black because it had swallowed a huge amount of poisonous black water. However, he was not worried. In the next half a month, the heaven-mending orb would definitely be able to purify the poisonous black water and turn it into a majestic and mysterious white light to strengthen the power of his soul. An hour later, Tai heard the news and hurried over. Seeing the blue and clear seawater in the canyon without a trace of poisonous black water, he was rather shocked and felt that it was inconceivable. The poisonous black water released by the blood god's son made even me feel apprehensive. Even a soul-level formation would be penetrated within a few days. I really didn't expect that you, Tianqing, would only use a short day to remove all the poisonous black water. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I really wouldn't dare to believe it. How did you do it? Ji Tianqing only smiled and did not explain. Tai, the crisis has been resolved. I can't help much even if I stay. The poisonous black water in the black ink region should dissipate on its own soon. You still have to properly settle the hundreds of millions of people. You should be busy for a long time. We won't disturb you any longer. Farewell. Ji Tianqing took Yun Yao and the Black Dragon to bid farewell to Tai in person. Tai saw that he looked tired but wanted to leave as soon as possible, so he warmly urged him to stay. Tianqing, if it weren't for your help this time, I definitely wouldn't have been able to quell this disaster. Not just the Black Ink region, half of the East Sea would probably be in chaos. Hundreds of millions of people would have died. It was you who turned the tide and saved the entire East Sea, saving the lives of hundreds of millions of people. How can I let you leave with such a great favor? I hope you can stay for a while longer. When I'm done, I'll thank you properly. Right now, you've used up too much of your magic power and are exhausted. You should stay and rest. Ji Tianqing shook his head and rejected his friendship. Tai, I really do have important things to do. I can't waste any more time. As for the favor, since you treat me as a brother, there's no need to be formal. Just remember it in your heart. Tai saw that he was determined and could not persuade him anymore. After a moment of silence, he could only nod. All right. I and the Imperial Court of the Water Race will remember your favor. We will definitely repay you in the future. Since you have important things to do, I won't keep you any longer. Oh right, if there's anything you need, feel free to ask. This monarch will definitely do his best to help. Thank you for your kind intentions. Let's part ways here. We'll meet again. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and left with Yunyao. He stepped onto the black dragon and quickly swam away. The black dragon carried Ji Tianqing and Yunyao and quickly swam to the surface of the sea. 10 breaths later, the black dragon rushed out of the sea and flew into the blue sky. It was time for the sun to rise from the east. The bright red sun rose from the horizon in the east, dyeing the vast sea red. A gentle breeze blew. The sky was high and the sea was wide. The black dragon let out a roar and flew across the sky toward the eastern sea's returning ruins. Previously, it had received Long Yuan's power and its power had increased explosively. Its magic power and dragon breath had more than doubled. After all, Long Yuan was a powerful being in the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. Even if he only gave it 30% of his 800 years of cultivation, it was enough for it to successfully break through to the 2nd level of the soul refinement realm. In reality, the little black dragon's benefits were not limited to what was on the surface. Increasing one level of cultivation was secondary. Its greatest gain was the increase in the power of its dragon breath. It had also inherited Long Yuan's combat skills and cultivation experience. This was the most precious thing to it. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao sat on the black dragon's back. They each consumed a spirit pill and began to meditate to recover their magic power. As time passed, the sun and moon rose in the east and set in the west. Day after day passed. About 10 days later, the black dragon finally arrived at the entrance of the eastern sea's returning ruins. When 2 towering mountains appeared on the sea ahead, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both ended their cultivation and opened their eyes. Looking at the 2 lonely black mountains, the 2 only felt a mysterious and cold aura coming from them. This was Ji Tianqing's 2nd time coming to the eastern sea's returning ruins. But when he saw the eastern sea's returning ruins again, he was still very unfamiliar with this forbidden land. He maintained vigilance and reverence in his heart. In ancient words, the returning ruins means the end of the sea. The eastern sea's returning ruins is the end of the eastern sea. Legend has it that this is the boundary between heaven and earth. Stepping into the eastern sea's returning ruins is another world, a magical and extraordinary world. Since ancient times, the eastern sea's returning ruins has left behind too many myths and legends. It has always been regarded as the continent's #1 forbidden land. Ji Tianqing stared at the foggy sea surface and introduced it to Yunyao. There are all kinds of bizarre events and scenes here. It's filled with danger and also full of opportunities. Yunyao nodded and looked around curiously. She asked, Tianqing, are we going straight to our target or are we going to explore the eastern sea? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said in a low voice, business is more important. Let's go to the sun-moon furnace first and check it out carefully. He thought to himself. It had been 3 months since he left Middle State. There were only about 9 months left of the 1-year period set by the Mansion Lord. He did not want to waste these 9 months, much less waste them. Therefore, he had to make the best use of his time to cultivate and raise his strength desperately. Swoosh! The black dragon passed through the 2 mountains on the sea surface and flew into the returning ruins. The moment they entered the returning ruins, Ji Tianqing and Yunyao felt as if they had entered another world. The sky was filled with a hazy, gray mist. It was boundless, preventing them from seeing what was before them. The surroundings were filled with an invisible pressure, suppressing the power of their souls. As a result, their souls could only scan a radius of 10 kilometers. The surroundings were silent. They could not hear anything, nor could they see anything alive. There was no sea breeze in the sky, and the surface of the sea did not move at all. Such a strange scene filled Yunyao with curiosity, but at the same time, she was also secretly vigilant. Ji Tianqing had seen it before, so he was not surprised at all when he saw it now. He thought silently about how he should search for the Neptunian divine pearl after finding the sun-moon furnace. The black dragon flew steadily above the surface of the sea, heading towards the sun-moon furnace according to the direction and route Ji Tianqing had pointed out. In the next few days, the two of them traveled through the returning ruins. The process was extremely peaceful, and they did not come across any danger. Even though powerful, demonic beasts appeared below the surface of the sea, in the sky, and on a few islands along the way. However, when the demonic beasts sensed the presence of the divine dragon, they were all frightened out of their wits. They were afraid to show themselves or attack them. Half a month later, the two of them passed through the outer regions of the returning ruins and entered the true forbidden grounds of the returning ruins. Chapter 1260. One island after another floated in the air above the sea. This was the floating island sea region. Each floating island had a radius of several hundred miles. From afar, they looked like mushrooms or large umbrellas floating in the air. It was a spectacular sight. However, under this new and spectacular scene, there was a great danger. When the black dragon flew past a floating island covered in primitive forests, it alarmed the demonic beast on the floating island. On this floating island with a radius of over 500 miles, there was a lightning sky wolf that was over 100 meters tall and the size of a small mountain. It was named Lightning Sky Wolf not because it could control the power of thunder and lightning, but because it was as fast as lightning. When it moved, it was only an afterimage. Its entire body was silver-white and sparkled with specks of starlight. It was clear that this lightning sky wolf had occupied this place for countless years. The surrounding sea region of 50,000 miles was its hunting range. It absorbed the essence of the sun and moon day and night, casting a body of silver fur that was as tough as soul-grade armor. It rushed out of the floating island, turning into a silver afterimage. It stretched out its claws and valiantly pounced on the black dragon. Although the black dragon's strength had reached the second level of the soul refinement realm and its entire body emitted a divine aura, it did not intimidate it. Instead, it gave rise to a cruel and bloodthirsty desire. It vowed to tear the black dragon to pieces and devour it. After all, its strength had reached the fifth level of the soul refinement realm. In its eyes, the black dragon was an excellent tonic. If it could devour the black dragon, it could absorb the dragon's blood and soul, and its bloodline would evolve and improve greatly. When danger approached, the black dragon immediately sensed that something was wrong. Its eyes flashed with a cold light. It opened its mouth and let out a dragon roar. A huge northern underworld black water pillar shot towards the lightning sky wolf. The lightning sky wolf's strength was extraordinary. Its figure flashed and dodged the northern underworld black water pillar. It continued to attack the black dragon. That terrifyingly powerful black water pillar streaked across the sky and hit the floating island dozens of miles away with a loud boom. The huge floating island was blasted into pieces on the spot, sending dust and debris into the air. Strangely, the floating island was shattered into several pieces, but it was still floating in the air and did not fall into the sea. However, the black dragon did not have the time to think about this problem. Seeing the lightning sky wolf's sharp claws pouncing in front of him, he did not hesitate to raise his dragon claws and fiercely slap them. Boom! The dragon claw and the wolf claw collided with a loud bang, exploding with a loud bang that reverberated in the sky. The heavenly lightning wolf was about 10 times smaller than the black dragon, but its speed and strength were terrifyingly powerful. The black dragon was actually sent tumbling backwards, landing on the surface of the sea 10 miles away. The heavenly lightning wolf was also sent flying. However, after flying 1,000 meters away, it quickly twisted its body and turned into a silver afterimage, attacking the black dragon as fast as lightning. In that instant it was as if a bolt of silver lightning had really streaked across the sky, suffocating the black dragon's neck. At the same time, Ji Tianqing and Yun Yao had already woken up. The two of them stood in the sky with cold expressions. Their bodies surged with monstrous killing intent. Yun Yao let out a tender cry as she waved her cold moon sword and ruthlessly slashed out a huge crescent-shaped sword light. Moonblade Sky Attack. The silver crescent-shaped sword light streaked across the sky and slashed towards the heavenly lightning wolf, bursting with an invincible power. However, the heavenly lightning wolf waved its front claws and smashed the sword light into pieces with a boom. At this time, Ji Tianqing also attacked brazenly. He didn't use the broken sword, Burial of Heaven. Instead, he released 3 divine soul magic swords and performed a unique sword technique to attack the heavenly lightning wolf. Soul Slashing Sword. The 3 divine soul magic swords all turned into giant white swords that were as dazzling as the sun. The heavenly lightning wolf's front, left and right sides were blocked by the divine soul magic swords. There was nowhere for it to hide. Boom, boom, boom. A series of loud noises burst out. White light that blotted out the sky and the sun exploded in the sky, surging with raging airwaves. The heavenly lightning wolf was sent flying on the spot. There were huge wounds on its head and back, and dark red blood gushed out. Ji Tianqing's divine soul magic swords not only cut its physical body, but also attacked its divine soul through the body. Its divine soul was shaken, and it was sent flying 10 miles away. Still dizzy, it drew an arc in the sky and fell towards the sea below. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Ji Tianqing controlled the 3 divine soul magic swords to burst out with even more power to chase after the heavenly lightning wolf. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 divine soul magic swords pierced the sky with a long, blazing white majesty, and pierced towards the heavenly lightning wolf's head, neck, and back in an invincible manner. When the heavenly lightning wolf finally woke up and could control its body to move, it was already too late. It didn't have time to escape before it was pierced by the 3 divine soul magic swords. Boom, boom, boom. Another series of loud noises burst out, shaking the sky. Its head, neck, and back were all hit by the divine soul magic swords, and huge holes appeared on the spot. Broken bones and blood splattered everywhere. Then, the terrifying power of the 3 giant swords poured into its body and exploded with a loud bang. With a loud boom, its mountain-like body exploded on the spot, turning into pieces of flesh and blood that covered the sky and covered the earth, scattering all over the sky. The sky for dozens of miles around turned into a world of white light mixed with dark red flesh and blood. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, and the wind howled. Among the flesh and blood that covered the sky, there was a dense white light that streaked across the sky like a meteor, fleeing into the distance as fast as lightning. Inside the dense white light was a white crystal the size of a wash basin. It was the heavenly lightning wolf's soul crystal. The black dragon had long expected this result. Its figure flashed and rushed up, blocking the soul crystal's escape path. It raised a pair of mountain-sized dragon claws and slapped the soul crystal hard. Bang! The soul crystal was sent flying back to where it came from. The soul crystal was still flying in the sky. Before it could stop, Ji Tianqing controlled the divine soul magic swords and slashed at it. With a crisp, "Kacha" sound, the lightning sky wolf's soul crystal was shattered into 4 pieces on the spot. The ferocious heavenly lightning wolf was killed by Ji Tianqing just like that. 4 pieces of blazing white soul crystals fell from the sky and landed on the sea below. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and shot out 4 golden palms, grabbing the 4 soul crystal fragments and bringing them back to him. The battle was over. The black dragon and Yun Yao returned to his side. The two rode the black dragon and continued to fly forward. Ji Tianqing stood on the dragon's back, holding the 4 pieces of the soul crystal in his left hand and the broken sword Burial of Heaven in his right hand. As expected of a demon beast at the 5th level of the soul refining realm. After absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon for hundreds of years, the soul crystal's divine soul power is so vast. Chapter 1261. Ji Tianqing placed the soul crystal fragment of the heavenly lightning wolf into the broken sword and handed it over to Burial of Heaven to devour. For Burial of Heaven, the fastest way to recover its strength was to devour the soul crystal of a demon beast. In the past half a year, it had rarely made a sound or showed its face. It had been quietly recovering its strength. Ji Tianqing couldn't estimate to what extent its strength had recovered. But he could roughly guess that the power of Burial of Heaven's sword was now a genuine soul-level top-grade item. It was only a step away from recovering to the primordial spirit level. After a while, Burial of Heaven devoured the soul crystal fragment. Ji Tianqing put away the broken sword. Yun Yao stood beside him, frowned and thought for a while. Then she said, "Tianqing, I saw you use the soul magic sword just now. Its power seems to be stronger than before." Ji Tianqing nodded and explained, "That's true. The heaven-mending orb provides a steady stream of mysterious power, making my soul grow stronger. In the past 2 months, the power of my soul has doubled. It will soon reach the 4th level of the soul refining realm." Yun Yao showed a gratified expression and asked, "Why haven't I seen you use the secret technique you used just now? Is it a secret technique you recently comprehended?" The corners of Ji Tianqing's mouth curled up into a smile as he nodded and said, "Actually, I didn't fully comprehend it myself. The soul slayer I used just now is a sword technique of Kenshin's secret technique. However, my strength hasn't reached the saint realm, so I can't fully display it. Adding my own comprehension and adaptability, I used the soul magic sword to display it. Just now was the first time I used it. It was also the prototype of the soul slayer sword technique. I have to study and comprehend it more in the future." The two chatted for a while, then sat on the dragon's back and continued to meditate. 3 days later, when Ji Tianqing was cultivating, he suddenly noticed a change in the sword world. He immediately ended his cultivation and entered the sword world with his soul to check the scene inside. He saw that the vast sword world was undergoing an earth-shattering change. The world within the sword was originally bright and sunny, but now, the sky was covered with dark clouds, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. In a majestic mountain range 2,000 miles away from peaceful Soil City, there was a 1,000-meter-tall mountain peak that shone with the light of the sun and moon. The golden and silver dermic powers were exceptionally dazzling, illuminating half of the sky. Deep under the mountain peak, there seemed to be a giant ball of gold and silver light that was boiling. A terrifying force spread out and spread through the ground, causing the earth and mountains within 1,000 miles to tremble and rumble. The nearby mountain peaks were shaking violently. Large cracks were constantly appearing on them, and countless boulders and yellow soil were rolling down. The dark clouds in the sky of Heaven City swirled continuously, actually formed a pitch-black vortex of the mountain peaks. It was of the Heaven City's eyes, the of Heaven's birth Heaven City, the Heaven of Heaven lightning. Such a huge worldly anomaly was like the wrath of Heaven Duke, and a calamity was about to descend. All the Earth Spirit citizens in peaceful Soil City were alarmed. Thousands of citizens looked up at the sky, seeing the dark clouds, lightning, and wind wreaking havoc. Their faces were filled with fear and worry. The city was in chaos. The citizens ran about in panic, discussing and crying out. "Heavens! How can this be? What's going on? Why is there such a shocking change in the world? Did we do something wrong and offend the gods? Are they sending down a calamity to punish us? Everyone, quickly hide. The calamity is coming. Where's young Master Ji? Quickly inform young Master Ji. He must know what's going on." In the hearts of the Earth Spirit citizens, Ji Tianqing was an omnipotent expert. There was nothing in the world that he couldn't do. When the calamity was about to arrive, all the citizens hoped that he would appear. Ji Tianqing witnessed the changes in the sword world with his own eyes. His expression immediately changed, revealing a grave expression. That mountain peak seems to be where Qianyue is cultivating in seclusion. Now that there's such a phenomenon, it's probably about to break through to the soul-refining state. However, the phenomenon of heaven and earth caused by the black dragon's breakthrough to the soul-tempering stage wasn't as earth-shattering as this one. What's going on? Is Qianyue's situation special? Are there any changes? Full of doubts and worries, he immediately entered the sword world and flew to the sky above peaceful Soil City. His voice was as loud as a bell. Don't panic, everyone. This is not the wrath of the gods or a calamity. This is a phenomenon caused by my pet breaking through to the soul-refining state. It'll be over soon. Everyone, stay at home and don't go out casually in case of accidents. His voice turned into a rumbling sound wave that spread throughout the entire peaceful Earth City, allowing all the citizens to hear him clearly. When the Earth Spirit Race citizens saw him and heard his explanation, they felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders, and they felt much more at ease. Ji Tianqing saw that the city had calmed down. He hurriedly flew to the mountain 2,000 kilometers away to see what was going on. A quarter of an hour later, he had flown more than 1,000 kilometers away and landed on a mountain peak 200 kilometers away from Qianyue. He originally wanted to fly to the mountain peak where Qianyue was in seclusion to take a closer look. However, the black clouds in the sky had already condensed. A few bolts of purple lightning had condensed in the huge black vortex, ready to strike at any time. The space within a radius of 300 miles was sealed by the invisible divine power of heaven and earth, like a cage. Ji Tianqing wanted to approach Qianyue's place of seclusion. Not only did he have to endure the terrifying divine power of heaven and earth, but he also had to be struck by lightning. How can this be? The phenomenon caused by Qianyue breaking through to the soul-refining state is so strange and terrifying. Just how strong is its talent? He murmured in confusion. He couldn't figure it out. At that moment, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind. It said solemnly, Tianqing, this isn't a phenomenon caused by breaking through to the soul-refining state. It's a heavenly tribulation. What? A heavenly tribulation? Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and asked in disbelief, a heavenly tribulation? Isn't that the 9th tribulation realm, which is even stronger than the essence soul realm? Qianyue hasn't broken through to the soul-refining state yet. Why would it trigger a heavenly tribulation? Burial of Heaven explained in a solemn tone, a heavenly tribulation is a restriction and shackle imposed by the heavenly Tao on living beings. Its existence represents the will of heaven. Even gods can't control it. Generally speaking, the heavenly tribulation of humans, demons, devils, and other living beings will only appear after they reach the essence soul realm. I don't know why that little heavenly fox triggered a heavenly tribulation when it broke through to the soul-refining state. Perhaps this is a test from the will of heaven, a restriction and shackle on the heavenly fox race. Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, Ji Tianqing frowned and muttered with a heavy heart, why do I feel that the will of heaven is targeting the heavenly fox race? Could it be that the heavenly fox race has offended the will of heaven or done something against the will of heaven? Chapter 1262. Ji Tianqing had learned about Qian Yu's background from the Beast King. However, at this moment, he realized that he knew nothing about the Heavenly Fox clan. The absurd idea that popped up in his mind made him feel that it was laughable. However, the Burial of Heaven did not deny it, and even hinted that it was possible. This made him even more curious about the secrets of the Heavenly Fox clan. At this moment, the dark vortex in the sky condensed to the limit, and the power of thunder was also accumulated to the extreme. Kaboom! An earth-shattering sound burst out, echoing through the clouds for 3,000 miles. A blinding bolt of purple lightning shot out from the black vortex and struck the mountain peak in the middle of the mountains. The power of the thunderbolt was so powerful that it could make the world tremble. Even though Ji Tianqing was more than 200 kilometers away, he could clearly see that the lightning bolt was more than 1,000 meters tall and more than a dozen meters thick. Such a terrifying thunderbolt was dozens of times more powerful than the thunderbolt released by his Thunder Dharma eye. This was not a power that could be controlled by a warrior. Only the gods or the divine power of heaven and earth could reach such a terrifying level. In the blink of an eye, the destructive pillar of lightning struck the mountain where Qian Yu was in seclusion. The towering mountain, thousands of feet high, was shattered into pieces on the spot, bursting into gravel and dregs. Endless dust and smoke spread out in all directions, covering the sky for hundreds of miles. The area was almost dark, and the light was so dim that it was impossible to see anything. The violent shock wave, mixed with purple thunderbolt and dust, spread out in all directions. Wherever the shock wave passed, mountains higher than thousands of feet were all flattened in an instant, as if they were neatly cut by a giant blade. Ji Tianqing hurriedly released his protective mana and condensed it into a golden light barrier. Only then was he able to block the destructive shock wave. After a while, the shock wave flattened the mountains within a radius of 500 miles, and the power gradually weakened and calmed down. Ji Tianqing stared at the place where Qian Yu was in seclusion, and his heart was full of worry. When the lightning and dust dissipated, he saw that the 1,000-foot-tall mountain had disappeared, leaving only a huge crater with a radius of 50 miles. The deep pit was charred black, with thick smoke billowing out from it. The power of thunder, the might of heaven and earth, is actually so terrifying. Ji Tianqing had personally witnessed the might of the heavenly tribulation lightning. He couldn't help but be shocked and exclaim in admiration. He had thought that the purple lightning bolt was the heavenly tribulation, a test for Qian Yu. However, he suddenly realized that the pitch-black vortex in the sky had not dissipated. A second lightning beam had condensed within it and was about to strike down. Clearly, Qian Yu's heavenly tribulation was not just one bolt of lightning. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was even more worried about Qian Yu's safety. Even if I were to be struck by that lightning, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to survive. Qian Yu had yet to break through to the soul refinement realm, so how could he withstand such heavenly might? A bolt of lightning has just ended, and yet another one is about to descend. No, I have to save it. After saying that, he immediately flew into the sky and flew towards the huge pit. However, the invisible divine power that filled heaven and earth wrapped around him like a quagmire, making it difficult for him to struggle. His flying speed was pitifully slow. Usually, he would only need a few dozen breaths to cover the distance of 200 miles. But now, he would need to fly for at least an hour to reach it. He struggled desperately, and did not hesitate to use his divine soul golden sword. He stepped on it and rushed towards the deep pit. However, the more power he exerted, the stronger the invisible divine power shackles became. Burial of Heaven advised in a low voice, "Tianqing, don't waste your energy. This is the shackles of the divine power of heaven and earth, and also the will of heaven. No matter who goes through the heavenly tribulation, they can only rely on themselves. Others can't get close, let alone help. Otherwise, they will be punished by heaven." Ji Tianqing was immediately filled with resentment. He asked unwillingly, "Can I only watch Qian Yu go through the tribulation and be blasted into pieces by the lightning without being able to do anything?" Burial of Heaven calmly explained, "This is the will of heaven. You can't disobey it. Qian Yu's fate is its fate. If you interfere forcefully, not only will you be punished by heaven, but the power of the heavenly tribulation will also double. If you really want to help it, you should stand here and watch. Don't interfere." This. Ji Tianqing was speechless for a moment. He could not refute Burial of Heaven's words. He could only suppress his anxiety and watch the situation in the field. It looked like the lightning pillar in the pitch-black vortex was about to descend from the sky and strike down. At this moment, in the pitch-black pit below, a bright ray of moonlight suddenly lit up and shot up into the sky like a bolt of lightning. It was a huge ball of silver light, which wrapped around 100-meter long, ice-blue celestial fox. The celestial fox's body was huge, and it had 9 gorgeous tails. Its whole body was glowing with an ice-blue light, exuding a domineering aura. In the face of the dark vortex in the sky and the destructive pillar of lightning, it was fearless. It stayed in the sky and put on a defensive posture, as if it was going to resist the heavenly tribulation lightning. Ji Tianqing could see clearly that there were several charred wounds on its body, and blood was constantly dripping. Although it seemed to be fine, it was indeed injured by the lightning from before. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing became more and more worried. He prayed silently in his heart, "Qianyu, you must hold on." When this thought flashed through his mind, the pillar of lightning in the sky suddenly came down. Kaboom! In the deafening sound, the pillar of lightning hit Qianyu hard and covered its body. The purple arc of lightning and light that blotted out the sky violently exploded in mid-air, causing the world to shake violently. The violent shock wave spread out, once again covering a radius of 500 miles. The mountain peaks that had already been cut in half were completely flattened. Craters were also blasted into the ground, causing dust to fly up into the air. Ji Tianqing blocked the shock wave with his magical power shield. He stood proudly in the sky, staring at Qianyu, who was wrapped in lightning. He quickly saw that the lightning in the sky burst out in all directions, then gradually dissipated and calmed down. A dazzling ball of silver light appeared, floating in the chaotic sky. In the huge ball of silver light, there was a huge celestial fox. It was Qianyu. Its injuries were even more serious, and the wounds on its body were even more dense. It was blood-stained, and it looked even more miserable. Not only that, most of the wounds were charred black, and black smoke was rising in spirals. Unfortunately, Ji Tianqing was too far away to see its specific injuries. He could only guess that its injuries were very serious. Chapter 1263. Qianyu had already endured 2 bolts of divine lightning. However, the pitch-black vortex in the sky was still there, showing no signs of dissipating. Another bolt of lightning was still brewing within the vortex. Ji Tianqing heaved a sigh of relief, feeling fortunate that Qianyu had successfully survived the lightning tribulation. Seeing that the 3rd bolt of lightning was about to appear, his heart tightened again, and he hurriedly flew toward Qianyu. He had heeded the advice of the burial of heaven not to interfere with the lightning tribulation. However, he wanted to be closer to Qianyu so that he could see more clearly and give Qianyu some encouragement. After about 10 seconds, he had only flown over 20 kilometers when another bolt of dazzling lightning appeared in the sky. Kaboom! Following a loud explosion, a massive bolt of purple lightning shot out from the pitch-black vortex, crashing toward Qianyu. This bolt of lightning was even more powerful than the previous 2 bolts, and its momentum was even more terrifying. The sky within a radius of several hundred kilometers was illuminated by the purple lightning, and even the air seemed to have solidified. In the face of this most powerful bolt of lightning, Qianyu's body glowed with a dazzling cold light, and it let loose a low roar as it charged toward the bolt of lightning. When the lightning tribulation descended, no one could avoid it. They could only choose to face it head-on, and there was no way to avoid it. Qianyu dared to face the bolt of lightning so bravely because it had something to rely on. There was a ball of white light hovering above its head. This was a necklace of icy blue gemstones, with a purple crystal dangling from the end. This was the mysterious necklace that the Beast King had placed on it when it first picked it up. Perhaps it had something to do with its past. At the same time, this necklace was also a mysterious and powerful treasure. It was the silver moonlight released by the necklace, which condensed into a massive light barrier, protecting Qianyu and helping it block the bolt of lightning. It used all of its strength to activate the power of the necklace, causing the light barrier to become even more dazzling and powerful. Bam! Amidst an earth-shattering boom, the lightning beam slammed down and struck the silver light barrier. The deafening sound spread for hundreds of miles and reverberated intensely in the sky. The dazzling silver light barrier was also blasted into pieces by the lightning beam. It exploded into pieces on the spot, filling the sky with debris. Even the shield formed by the mysterious chain of beads couldn't withstand the terrifying tribulation lightning. Fortunately, the power of the lightning beam was reduced by 90% by the shield. With only 10% of its power left, it slammed into Qianyu, sending it plummeting from the sky and crashing into the crater below. White light fragments and lightning arcs filled the sky, illuminating half of the sky. Violent shockwaves spread out in all directions, stirring up a terrifying hurricane and turning hundreds of miles of flat land into ruins. The loud noise that shook the 9 heavens lasted for a long time in the sky before dissipating. The flying debris and dust, as well as the purple lightning arcs that filled the sky, gradually disappeared after 100 breaths. The pitch-black vortex in the sky gradually collapsed and dissipated. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that Qianyu's heavenly tribulation was finally over. The formless divine power that filled the heavens and earth also gradually dissipated. Everything returned to tranquility. After the dark clouds in the sky dispersed, the sun finally reappeared. Ji Tianqing was no longer bound by the invisible cage and could finally move freely. He quickly flew across the sky and rushed towards the huge crater as fast as he could to check on Qianyu's condition. Swoosh! In a short time, he rushed to the top of the huge crater. He looked down at the crater and searched for traces of Qianyu with his sharp eyes. He saw that the crater was pitch black and billowing black smoke. The walls of the crater were made of rocks that had been scorched black by the lightning and were emitting scorching heat. The bottom of the crater was full of black scorched earth, like a ruin. In the middle of the crater, under a pile of black scorched earth, a touch of icy blue could be vaguely seen. Ji Tianqing was instantly energized. He quickly flew to the bottom of the crater and waved his palms, creating a brilliant golden light. Swoosh! The golden light pushed away the scorched earth in the crater, revealing Qianyu's figure. It was lying at the bottom of the crater, buried under countless scorched earth. The light on its body was dim and it looked quite miserable. Ji Tianqing used his divine sense to investigate and immediately found that its breath was weak and its strength had been exhausted. It was in a state of near unconsciousness. Moreover, its body was covered with dense black scorched wounds and its thick fur was stained with blood. It was severely injured and its strength was extremely weak. Even its divine sense was severely damaged and it urgently needed to recuperate. When he saw this, Ji Tianqing was stunned. Qianyu has already condensed its divine sense. It successfully passed the heavenly tribulation and successfully broke through to the spirit-tempering realm. Thinking of this, he finally relaxed and felt happy for Qianyu. Qianyu's injuries were too severe and he did not dare to waste any time. He quickly used a pair of golden hands and pulled Qianyu out of the crater. Qianyu was on the verge of unconsciousness. When it sensed his breath, it became much more awake. Its body flashed coldly and its body shrunk rapidly until it was only 3 meters long. "Old Ji, why are you here?" It looked at Ji Tianqing with blurry eyes and spoke in a low and intermittent voice. Ji Tianqing quickly injected a large amount of mana into it to help stabilize its injuries. "Qianyu, don't speak first. I will take you back to heal first." Qianyu gently shook its head and said in a weak voice, "Old Ji, don't worry about me. I just passed the heavenly tribulation. I will recover soon, past the heavenly tribulation, only." Ji Tianqing frowned and looked at it with a strange expression. He said in a bad mood, "You are injured to this extent and you still can't change your bad habit of bragging." Qianyu narrowed its eyes and squeezed out a sly smile. It explained, "Don't make a fuss. As a heavenly fox, I am destined to continue to pass the heavenly tribulation." When Ji Tianqing heard this, his heart suddenly moved. He quickly asked, "Qianyu, are you heavenly foxes destined to endure more heavenly tribulations? Why is that?" Qianyu shook its head and said in a weak voice, I don't know why, but I know that these are the memories passed down in my soul. Before it could finish speaking, its eyes closed and it immediately fell into a coma. Ji Tianqing did not ask any more questions. He quickly took it across the sky and rushed back to Anshui City. The heavenly tribulation had ended and Anshui City had calmed down. The people had returned to normal. Ji Tianqing settled Qianyu in a secret room in the city lord's residence and began to treat its injuries. He first gave Qianyu a few healing pills and used the Wood Emperor's umbrella to heal Qianyu's injuries. Finally, he injected a large amount of spiritual energy into Qianyu to help heal its spiritual energy. After an entire day, Qianyu's injuries began to improve and its condition stabilized. Chapter 1264. Swoosh. With a flash of white light, Ji Tianqing exited the sword world and returned to Black Dragon's back. Black Dragon was still flying in the sea, approaching the sun-moon furnace. Yun Yao was waiting worriedly. When she saw Ji Tianqing appear, she quickly came forward and asked about the situation with concern. Tianqing, you suddenly entered the sword world and didn't come out for an entire day. Did something happen? Ji Tianqing explained, Qianyue is cultivating in seclusion in the sword world. When he broke through to the soul-tempering realm, he triggered a heavenly tribulation. I was afraid that something would happen to him, so I went to check on the situation. Heavenly tribulation? Yun Yao was stunned. Her eyes were filled with disbelief. Doesn't heavenly tribulation only appear at the 9th tribulation realm? Qianyue is only breaking through to the soul-tempering realm. Why would there be a heavenly tribulation? Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a serious tone, I'm also puzzled about this. But he's a mysterious heavenly fox. Perhaps there are some unknown secrets. Yun Yao nodded slightly. She vaguely understood something and asked with concern, did he successfully pass the heavenly tribulation? What's his situation now? Ji Tianqing waved his hand, indicating that she didn't need to worry. He's seriously injured, but his life isn't in danger. I've already treated his injuries. He'll be fine after resting for half a month. Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief. She frowned and said, Qianyue's situation is so special. He triggered a heavenly tribulation when breaking through to the soul-tempering realm. After transcending the heavenly tribulation, his strength will definitely skyrocket. Moreover, the Heavenly Fox clan hides a huge secret. When he wakes up, you can ask him if he knows about it. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood and stopped talking about this matter with her. He looked at the sea in front of him and observed the situation around him. He found that Black Dragon had already left the floating island. The surrounding sky was filled with thick clouds and mist. One after another, towering mountains stood in the white clouds and thick fog, like floating immortal mountains. Ji Tianqing knew that they weren't far from the sun-moon cauldron. Moreover, those seemingly ethereal floating mountains often had powerful demon beasts entrenched in them. He sat down cross-legged and swallowed a few pills. He circulated his qi and adjusted his breathing to recover the magic power he had lost. The Black Dragon flew past the many floating mountains, rushing towards the sun-moon furnace at lightning speed. The first few hours were quite peaceful, and they didn't encounter any danger along the way. Even if some of the mountain peaks were occupied by powerful demon beasts, they might not dare to act rashly when they sensed Black Dragon and Ji Tianqing. However, as the Black Dragon continued to venture deeper into the sinkhole, danger finally arrived. 12 hours later, an Emerald Sea Heavenly Eagle at the 5th level of the Soul Refinement Realm suddenly attacked He Long and Ji Tianqing. The Black Dragon had always been on guard. When the Jade Sea Sky Eagle launched an attack, it immediately reacted and launched a counterattack. The battle was on the verge of breaking out. The Black Dragon and the Jade Sea Heavenly Eagle exchanged 2 blows before the Black Dragon was sent flying. Ji Tianqing attacked decisively. He summoned 3 soul magic swords and performed the soul-slaying sword art again, killing the Blue Sea Heavenly Eagle in 3 moves. The Jade Sea Heavenly Eagle's body was cleaved into 2. Its soul crystal was also hacked into several pieces. Ji Tianqing obtained its soul crystal fragments and gave them to Burial of Heaven to devour to recover essence energy. The following 2 days, the Black Dragon passed through the floating mountain sea region and encountered several attacks along the way. Those demon beasts that dared to show up and attack were at least 4th level soul refinement realm and above. Everyone even encountered a 6th level soul refinement realm evil flood dragon. But without exception, these demon beasts were all killed by Ji Tianqing, Yun Yao, and the Black Dragon. The demon beast's soul crystal fragments were also given to Burial of Heaven by Ji Tianqing, helping it to quickly recover its strength. When the Black Dragon left the floating mountain sea region, Yun Yao heaved a sigh of relief in her heart and could not help sighing emotionally. The entire continent's soul refinement realm powerhouses added up probably can't compare to the number of soul refinement realm demon beasts here. The East Sea's sinkhole is indeed worthy of being the #1 forbidden land, to actually hide so many soul refinement realm demon beasts. A day later, the Black Dragon finally arrived at their destination. When they were still 100 miles away, Ji Tianqing saw 2 huge black shadows appear on the sea in front of him. 2 black mountain peaks that were 10,000 meters tall towered above the sea, supporting the sky. Looking from afar, those 2 mountain peaks seemed to be floating on the sea. But in reality, that was only the part of the 2 enormous mountains that was exposed above the sea. The majority of the mountain was hidden below the sea. Large amounts of seawater gushed out from the sea around the mountain peaks, converging into a dozen or so blue water pillars, flying into the sky and watering the 2 mountain peaks. There was a lake at the top of each of the 2 mountains that was filled with azure seawater. The seawater overflowed from the lake and fell down from the mountain peaks, forming a 10,000-meter tall waterfall that poured right between the 2 mountains, pouring into a massive vortex that was 100 miles in radius. 2 towering mountains, a dozen or so water pillars that flew into the sky, as well as 2 10,000-meter tall waterfalls, and that massive vortex, formed a very peculiar scene. It was Yun Yao and the Black Dragon's first time seeing such a wondrous scene. Both of them revealed shocked expressions and let out exclamations. Is this the legendary Sun-Moon Cauldron? It really is one of the wonders of the world. It's unbelievable. How can seawater flow into the sky? When the Black Dragon arrived near the Sun-Moon Cauldron, they could see even more clearly that there was a huge ball of golden light at the bottom of the vortex between the 2 mountains. It was like a scorching sun. In the lake at the peak of the 2 mountains, 2 bright moons could be clearly seen. The moon shines in the sky, the sun sinks to the bottom of the sea, the waterfall hangs high, and the seawater flows backwards. It really is a wondrous sight. Yun Yao stood on the back of the dragon and looked down. She could not help but sigh in amazement. Ji Tianqing studied the surroundings with his sharp eyes. Only after seeing nothing strange around the Sun-Moon Cauldron did he ask, Yao Yao, sense carefully. Is there the presence of the Neptunian orb nearby? All right. Yun Yao replied. She dismissed her thoughts in a hurry and closed her eyes to examine the surroundings. She used the power of the Neptunian orb within her, and it emitted an invisible and wondrous pulse that expanded into the surroundings. Ji Tianqing stood to one side to protect her. At the same time, he released the power of his soul to investigate the surroundings. Very soon, 100 seconds passed. Yun Yao finished her technique and opened her eyes. A smear of disappointment appeared on her face. Ji Tianqing asked in a hurry, Yao Yao, what's the situation? Yun Yao shook her head gently, I've already sensed carefully. I can't sense the presence of the Neptunian orb within a radius of 100 kilometers. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned. He murmured inside, is it not in the Sun-Moon Cauldron either? If that's the case, there probably won't be a second Neptunian orb on the profound sky continent. Yao Yao and I have traversed most of the East Sea and spent several months to get here. Are we destined to return empty-handed? After a moment of silence, he still felt rather unwilling to give up. He tried to persuade Yunyao, Yao, don't worry. We can't give up on hope. Chapter 1265. Yunyao obviously understood what Ji Tianqing meant. She nodded and said firmly, Tianqing, we've gone through so much and spent so many months to get here. Of course, I won't give up so easily. I've mainly investigated the surroundings earlier. There's no presence of a Neptunian pearl around the whirlpool or on the two mountains. However, there's a mysterious power in the whirlpool that seems to be able to cut off our senses. Let's investigate it more carefully. Ji Tianqing nodded in a hurry. All right. The core of the sun-moon furnace is right below the whirlpool. We obviously can't miss it. After he finished speaking, the black dragon descended from the sky and flew towards the vortex below. When it descended 10,000 meters and arrived above the whirlpool, it began to tremble violently as it flickered with light. Old G, the suction force of this whirlpool is far too great. If I continue to descend, I probably won't be able to endure it and will be devoured. Ji Tianqing and Yunyao both endured the powerful suction force as they were pulled by an invisible force. Yunyao was slightly weaker. Her footsteps were rather unsteady as she swayed gently. She did her best to maintain her balance. Ji Tianqing was unaffected. He was as steady as a rock, not moving at all. He said sternly, Little black dragon, stop here. Endure it for a while. The black dragon nodded and no longer said anything. It resisted the suction force with all its might and stopped above the whirlpool firmly. Yunyao did not waste any time. She used a secret technique in a hurry and used the power of the Neptunian pearl to search for another Neptunian pearl. Very soon, 100 seconds passed. She suddenly stopped circulating her cultivation technique and opened her eyes. Doubt filled her face. Ji Tianqing saw her strange expression and asked in a hurry, Yao, have you discovered the presence of a Neptunian pearl? Yunyao frowned. Only after a moment of hesitation did she say, I seem to have sensed a sliver of it, but it's vague. I can't be sure. Ji Tianqing frowned as well. He asked in some doubt, vague? In other words, the sun-moon cauldron might be hiding a Neptunian divine pearl, but its aura has been concealed. Yunyao nodded. That's right. I think so too. Ji Tianqing looked at the vortex below and said to the black dragon, Little black dragon, leave this place and wait for us above the sea. Then, he held Yunyao's hand and continued to descend into the vortex. In the blink of an eye, he and Yunyao descended below the surface of the sea, getting closer and closer to the center of the whirlpool. The suction force in the whirlpool was getting stronger and stronger. It was like many invisible hands that grabbed him and Yunyao tightly and dragged them into the whirlpool. Ji Tianqing unfolded the golden wings on his back, and a dazzling golden light enveloped him and Yunyao. He relied on his powerful strength to resist the suction force of the vortex and quickly descended more than 800 meters. At this moment, he and Yunyao were already in the middle of a whirlpool. They were surrounded by rapidly spinning seawater, and the center of the whirlpool was 100 meters below them. It was the place where the suction force was the most terrifying. With his strength and realm, being able to descend to this position was already his limit. He flapped his golden wings as hard as he could and erupted with tremendous power. He maintained his balance and hovered in the air. Yao, sense it again. Yunyao nodded. She closed her eyes in a hurry and used her technique to check for the Neptunian divine pearl's aura again. After about 30 breaths of time, she suddenly opened her eyes and revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. Tianqing. Our guess was right. There really is a Neptunian divine pearl in the cauldron. I can sense its aura. Yunyao's voice was filled with excitement and joy. Her eyes became much brighter as well. Ji Tianqing gathered his attention and nodded in a hurry. Just as I thought. We didn't come here for nothing. As long as we can obtain this Neptunian divine pearl, your cultivation will skyrocket, Yao Yao. The two of them were excited for a while, but they calmed down very soon. Tianqing, even if the Neptunian divine pearl exists in the sun-moon cauldron, we have to go in to find it. We haven't even entered the whirlpool yet, and the suction force is already so terrifying. The sun-moon cauldron under the whirlpool is also a wondrous sight where the divine energy of the world gathers. It must be terrifyingly powerful. Ji Tianqing nodded and said sternly, "That's right. The sun-moon cauldron is known as a divine artifact of the world. It's unbelievably powerful. It can even refine soul artifacts and god artifacts. With our strength, we'll be reduced to dust if we enter the sun-moon cauldron before we can find the Neptunian divine pearl." Yunyao frowned. She said worriedly, "Then what do we do? Do we have to give up?" "Impossible." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said firmly, "The Neptunian divine pearl is extremely important to you. It's related to your life. How can we give up?" "Don't worry. I've thought of an idea. It might work." Hearing this, Yunyao's eyes were filled with hope. "What's the idea?" Ji Tianqing took out the broken sword Burial of Heaven and said sternly, "This broken sword is a supreme-grade soul artifact. It's made of great material and has great defense. With it protecting me in the sun-moon cauldron, we might succeed." Yunyao thought for a moment and nodded. "That's right. A supreme-grade soul artifact's material and defense are several times stronger than ours. Only it can succeed. Tianqing, let's get ready. We'll use the power of the broken sword to enter the sun-moon cauldron to check." Before she could finish, Ji Tianqing shook his head and said firmly, "Yao Yao, it's not us. It's me. I'll go in alone to check the situation. You wait for me outside." "No." Yunyao subconsciously denied. She said worriedly, "Tianqing, the sun-moon cauldron is too dangerous. I can't let you take the risk alone." Ji Tianqing's attitude was just as firm. He said firmly, "It's exactly because it's too dangerous that I can't let you in. If I go in alone, my chances of success will be higher." Yunyao was still worried. "But if something happens to you, how am I supposed to face myself? Moreover, I can use my technique to sense the Neptunian divine pearl's location." Ji Tianqing reached out and held her shoulders. He looked at her with sincere eyes and said with certainty, "Yao Yao, I'd rather take the risk than let you get hurt. Moreover, with the power of the broken sword, protecting me is already the limit. It's almost impossible for it to protect both of us. Let's not argue anymore. It's decided." With that, he pulled Yunyao out of the whirlpool and sent her above the surface of the sea. The black dragon hurriedly flew over and carried Yunyao back into the sky. It looked down at the sun-moon cauldron from above. Yunyao stared at Ji Tianqing's figure and warned him in a heavy voice, "Tianqing, you must be careful. Don't take the risk if you can't do it. I'd rather give up the Neptunian divine pearl than let you be in danger." Chapter 1266. When Ji Tianqing rushed into the whirlpool, his figure flashed and entered the broken sword's world. Burial of Heaven controlled the broken sword and turned into a wisp of black light, ignoring the suction force of the whirlpool and entering the whirlpool unhurriedly. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the broken sword passed through the center of the whirlpool and entered the interior of the whirlpool, swallowed by a bright golden light. Yunyao and Black Dragon stopped above the whirlpool, only to see the broken sword being swallowed by the golden sun and completely disappearing. Black Dragon stared at the whirlpool without blinking, silently praying in his heart. Yunyao's heart was also in her mouth. She stared at the golden sun at the bottom of the whirlpool and muttered to herself, "Tianqing, oh Tianqing, you must come back safely." After the broken sword passed through the whirlpool, it seemed to have entered a special space. Although this was the interior of the whirlpool, it was very vast, like a circular golden ball of light. The golden ball of light had a radius of 300 miles, and the half-meter-long broken sword seemed particularly small in the ball of light. Ji Tianqing silently observed the scene in this space through Burial of Heaven's senses and vision. He saw that the surroundings were surrounded by a layer of golden light, isolating the endless seawater outside. This huge golden ball of light was the legendary sun-moon furnace, a special divine tool formed by the divine power of heaven and earth. There was no strong suction force inside the furnace, and there was no sound at all. It was very quiet. The dazzling golden light that filled the entire furnace was the legendary sun-moon divine fire, emitting a terrifying heat. Ji Tianqing had no doubt that if he didn't have the broken sword's protection and was exposed to the sun-moon divine fire, his body would be burned to ashes in less than 4 hours. Even if the broken sword was a top-grade soul tool, it still couldn't bear the burden of this sun-moon furnace and couldn't hold on for too long. As the broken sword swam in the furnace, Burial of Heaven said to Ji Tianqing in a low voice, "Tianqing, the power of the sun-moon furnace is enough to forge a soul tool. Even if I have a top-grade soul tool now, I can only hold on for half a day at most before I'm melted into liquid. Also, the sun-moon furnace is at its strongest at noon and midnight every day. It's evening now. You only have 6 hours. We have to leave this place before midnight." Ji Tianqing was releasing his soul power to search for the Neptunian divine orb's aura. Hearing Burial of Heaven's words, he said in a serious tone, "All right, I'll be as soon as possible." With that said, he released his soul power to search for the orb's aura. Of the sun-moon divine fire was of heaven and divine fire, of sun-moon divine fire, it could also greatly, of the sun-moon of the divine fire. Ji Tianqing's divine soul power could scan an area of 50 miles from the outside. Of the sun of the fire of the sun, the of the sun, of the of light, of this. Of the. Moreover, the broken sword was being burned by the sun-moon divine fire. Its power was rapidly being consumed, and its flying speed was also very slow. Ji Tianqing estimated that if the broken sword flew 2 rounds around the sun-moon furnace, it would take him more than 4 hours to search the entire furnace. Time was of the essence. Very quickly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing had searched an area of 50 miles. In this area, it was empty. There were only some scattered rocks at the bottom of the furnace. He could see that these rocks were rare top-grade ores and gems. Some of the ores were as hard as top-grade soul tools. They were materials used to forge soul tools. However, these ores and gems had already been melted into liquid and slag in the sun-moon furnace. They had turned into ugly rocks and lost their effectiveness. 2 hours later, Ji Tianqing had searched an area with a radius of 50 miles. In this area, he found some scraps of rock debris and an oval-shaped metal ball. The fist-sized metal ball was crystal clear. It shone with a golden brilliance and exuded a mysterious and heavy aura. This piece of metal is still intact in the sun-moon furnace. It must be extraordinary. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind. He released his spiritual power and condensed it into an invisible hand to grab the golden ball. However, the weight of the fist-sized metal ball was extremely shocking. It was as heavy as a 1,000-meter-tall mountain. Ji Tianqing was shocked. He was even more certain that this metal ball was extraordinary. He carefully manipulated his spiritual power to bring the metal ball into the sword world. The voice of the Burial of Heaven immediately sounded in his mind. It said in a low voice, "Tianqing, this is the star god metal. Take good care of it. I will need it to repair the sword in the future." Star god metal? Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully, "Why is this star god metal different from the one I got before?" 2 years ago, he had gotten a piece of star god metal from Qin Zheng, the governor of Liantian city. But the metal ball he got just now was obviously different from that golden stone. The Burial of Heaven explained, "The star god metal you got before was just an ordinary one. It was still in the state of gold and stone. This metal ball is a huge piece of star god metal. It has been burned for countless years by the sun-moon furnace and refined millions of times. This metal ball is the purest star god metal. There are no ores or impurities. According to my estimation, this piece of star god metal was at least as big as a house in the beginning. Ji Tianqing was shocked. He looked at the fist-sized metal ball in his hand and was speechless. A piece of star god metal as big as a house was smelted to the size of a fist. The quality of this piece of star god metal must be ridiculously high, right? The Burial of Heaven said solemnly, of course. This is a true divine item. It can be forged into a true god artifact. Even martial gods would fight over it. Fantastic. What an incredible harvest. Ji Tianqing's spirit was shaken, and his eyes were filled with joy. But why would such a huge piece of star god metal appear in the sun-moon furnace? Was it let in by someone? The Burial of Heaven fell silent for a moment before saying calmly, probably only the heavens know the answer to this question. Perhaps some god wanted to forge a god artifact and threw the star god metal here. Or perhaps the star god metal flew in from outer space and fell into the sea like a meteor, and was devoured by the sun-moon furnace. Anyway, there are all sorts of strange things in a place like the Eastern Sea's ruins of End. Anything can happen. Ji Tianqing nodded to show that he understood. He stopped dwelling on this question and continued to search for the Neptunian divine pearl's aura. As time passed, the power of the Burial of Heaven was greatly depleted. It slowed down drastically as well. The dazzling golden light in the sun-moon furnace gradually became mixed with a sliver of silver. The temperature rapidly soared as well. Chapter 1267. There was only an hour left before midnight. However, Ji Tianqing still had not found the Neptunian divine pearl. There was still an area of close to 100 kilometers that he had not searched. He became rather anxious, so he got Burial of Heaven to fly faster. He also searched in a hurry. However, the gold and silver light in the cauldron became more and more resplendent, igniting with gold and silver flames. The temperature in the cauldron rapidly rose, becoming more and more violent and terrifying. Let alone tempered steel, even low or mid-grade soul-tier treasures would be melted into liquid very quickly. The pressure on the broken sword became greater and greater, so it could not help but slow down. At the same time, the black light from the blade rapidly melted away under the terrifying heat. Its power rapidly weakened. As time passed, the broken sword's temperature rapidly rose, and it actually began to turn red. Soon, an hour would pass. The broken sword gradually turned from dark red to bright red, about to be melted. Tianqing, there's no time. We need to leave. Burial of Heaven did his best to hold on as he communicated with Ji Tianqing secretly. It's almost midnight. The cauldron is about to erupt. If we don't leave now, we'll all be burnt to ashes. Ji Tianqing became tense. He desperately circulated the power of his soul to search for the Neptunian divine pearl in the cauldron. After hearing Burial of Heaven's words, he only hesitated for a moment before saying firmly, Burial of Heaven, just hold on for a few more seconds. There's still one last region that we haven't searched. If you miss this opportunity, you'll need to rest for at least a month to recover. Only then can we enter this place again. Burial of Heaven obviously understood this, so he said nothing more. He erupted with power without any regard to anything else, resisting the terrifying heat and gold and silver flames. Very soon, 10 seconds passed. Midnight had finally arrived. The cauldron had reached its peak and was about to erupt. The cauldron within 150 kilometers was completely filled with gold and silver flames. The temperature had reached its limit. Tianqing, we need to go. Burial of Heaven called out sternly. The broken sword immediately shone with black light, flying towards the exit of the cauldron. However, Ji Tianqing suddenly discovered something. He called out emotionally, "Burial of heaven. I found it. I've finally found it." Burial of heaven had basically run out of power. It did not care what he said at all, desperately fleeing with the broken sword. However, it never thought that with a flash of light, Ji Tianqing would actually leap out of the sword world. Swish! He was enveloped by a barrier of golden light, without any regard for his own safety, to the pile of rubble at the bottom of the cauldron. Earlier, he had clearly sensed the presence of the Neptunian divine pearl in the strange pile of rubble. He had finally found the Neptunian divine pearl's immortal divine pearl. If he missed this opportunity, he would have to wait more than a month for buried heaven to recover his vitality before he could enter again. He did not want to wait that long. Moreover, something might happen during that time. Regardless, he wanted to obtain the Neptunian divine pearl immediately without any regard for anything else. His impulsiveness and desire made him forget about the dangers and the terrifying power of the cauldron. As soon as he appeared in the cauldron, before he could even approach the pile of rubble, the barrier of power around him collapsed from the flames, dispersing into nothingness. Afterwards, his clothes and hair were instantly incinerated by the flames as well, dispersing into the cauldron as black ash. He no longer had any clothes to cover his body. He was completely naked in the cauldron. Only his Kenshin robe remained. It turned into a pair of golden wings, remaining on his shoulders. However, the golden wings were unable to protect him. They only lasted for a few seconds before running out of power and returning to his body. As a result, Ji Tianqing no longer had anything to protect his body from the corrosion of the Sun-Moon divine fire. No matter how hard he tried to use his dermic powers to protect his body, it was futile. His skin darkened at a visible rate. He had been burnt to a crisp. Afterwards, his flesh rapidly dried up as well, reduced to pitch-black charcoal, dispersing into large clumps of black ash. In just a few seconds, Ji Tianqing had been burnt to a pitch-black color. He was like a huge piece of charcoal. The excruciating pain caused him to twitch all over. He almost cried out from the pain. At that moment, there was only a single thought in his head. If death was certain, he would rather be slain by a single strike than be burnt to death by the flames. The pain went from his body to his heart and then to his soul. It was an extreme pain that no one could endure. At this moment, a dark red streak of light flew over. Swish! The scorched red sword of the burial of heaven returned to his side. It shone with dense black light, enveloping him. Tianqing. You're too rash. You're too reckless. You even dared to resist the Sun-Moon divine fire. Do you want to die? The burial of heaven growled in a low voice. It was anxious and worried. As it spoke, it was about to open the entrance to the sword world and absorb Ji Tianqing into the sword world. However, at this moment, the power of the Sun-Moon cauldron exploded. Boom! Following a dull explosion, the boundless divine fire of the sun and moon converged into a huge torrent of flames that erupted from the bottom to the top. At that moment, the sun-moon divine fire exploded with its most violent power. It lit up with the brightest gold and silver light. Not only was Ji Tianqing sent flying by the torrent of flames, but even the red-hot broken sword was also sent flying by the torrent of flames. It rolled for dozens of miles. Ji Tianqing and the broken sword were separated. Not only could they not find each other, but they could not even protect themselves. The man and the broken sword were about to be burned to ashes and molten iron by the sun-moon divine fire. Ji Tianqing's soul was also shaken by the power of the sun-moon divine fire. He fell into a coma. At this moment of life and death, a mysterious white light suddenly erupted from his body. It condensed into a ball of light, protecting him. The dense white light contained an incomparably powerful aura. No matter how powerful the sun-moon divine fire was, it was blocked by the dense white light. It could not hurt him at all. The shield formed by the white light was like the world's toughest protective shell, protecting him tightly. Without a doubt, the mysterious white light that burst out from his body was the divine power of the heaven-mending orb. The broken sword was enveloped by the sun-moon divine fire. After flying for dozens of miles, it was melted and distorted. The red broken sword turned into a curved stick of fire. It was even dripping with crimson water. It was on the verge of collapse and disintegration. The endless sun-moon divine fire sealed off the cauldron's entrance to the whirlpool. At this critical moment, the burial of heaven knew that it could not escape the sun-moon cauldron. Therefore, it made a risky decision. Chapter 1268. 2 hours later, the divine fire of sun and moon in the sun and moon cauldron finally stopped surging and erupting. The gold and silver light was no longer dazzling and had returned to its previous state. The extreme heat had also returned to normal, and the entire cauldron had calmed down. Dense white light enveloped Ji Tianqing as he floated silently within the gold and silver flames, flowing slowly with the flames. Ji Tianqing finally woke up. He opened his eyes and let out a painful grunt. He moved his body slightly, and a few clumps of black ash fell from his body. A few cracks also appeared on his charred body. Fortunately, he had only been burned by the divine fire of sun and moon for a few dozen seconds before the heaven-mending orb released divine power to protect him. Only his skin and flesh had been charred. Most of his meridians and organs were still intact. Huff, the divine fire of sun and moon truly is terrifyingly powerful. As expected of the divine power of the world. Fortunately, I have the heaven-mending orb in me. I already knew that it would release divine power to protect me when my life was in danger. Ji Tianqing murmured inside as he circulated his energy to heal his injuries. When he discovered the Neptunian divine orb's aura earlier, he dared to jump out of the sword world precisely because of the heaven-mending orb. If it were not for that, he would never have done something so reckless. Of course, he did this with another intention, which was to test the effects of the heaven-mending orb. Although the process was rather dangerous, the final result was as he had expected. The heaven-mending orb would be activated when he was in danger and release divine power to protect him. Moreover, the heaven-mending orb's quality and power were even higher than the divine fire of sun and moon. It could easily block the corrosion of the divine fire. This made him feel much more assured, and he believed in the legend of the heaven-mending orb even more. 100 seconds later, he temporarily stabilized his injuries with the powerful regeneration of his Kenshin bloodline and tremendous azure wood powers. Although his body was still charred like charcoal and covered in cracks, making him look terrible, his injuries had been healed. They would no longer spread or worsen, nor would they affect his movements. Whoosh! Under the protection of the barrier of white light, he quickly flew towards the pile of rubble at the bottom of the cauldron. When he arrived before the pile of rubble, he could sense even more clearly with the power of his soul that the rubble constantly pulsed with divine power. The mysterious pulses were exactly the same as the Neptunian divine pearl's presence. He couldn't wait to summon a divine soul magic sword, sweeping away the rubble on the ground. After the dozens of oddly shaped rocks were pushed aside, a thumb-sized aquamarine orb immediately appeared in front of him. The translucent pearl was ocean blue in color and emitted a mysterious energy fluctuation. However, its divine power aura was very restrained. It didn't release any dazzling light, nor did it release any intense fluctuations. Because of this, Yunyao had to get close to the sun-moon furnace and use her secret technique to barely sense its aura. Ji Tianqing searched the entire sun-moon furnace before he finally discovered its existence. It was like a dusty pearl hidden in the sun and moon furnace, buried under a pile of rubble. It was unknown how many tens of thousands of years it had been hidden. Now that Ji Tianqing had found it, it could finally see the light of day again. He kept the blue aquamarine pearl in his spatial ring and heaved a sigh of relief. I've finally found a second Neptunian divine pearl. All the danger before was worth it. A while later, Ji Tianqing left the bottom of the furnace and flew northwest. Several dozen kilometers to the northwest, a ball of fire hovered in the air. The ball of fire contained a ball of dark red liquid and a fist-sized piece of metal. The dark red liquid was the shape of the melted broken sword, while the fist-sized piece of metal was the astral divine metal that Ji Tianqing had obtained earlier. The two fused together and hovered silently in the sun-moon furnace, being refined by the sun-moon divine flames. A while later, Ji Tianqing arrived before it and asked worriedly, "Burial of Heaven, are you still alive?" The ball of fire revolved gently as Burial of Heaven's voice rang out in his head. "Of course. The sun-moon divine flames are powerful, but they can't do anything to me. I'm a divine sword." Hearing Burial of Heaven's voice and how stable her breathing was, Ji Tianqing finally relaxed and let out a sigh of relief. "Burial of Heaven, it's fine as long as you're fine. Oh right, you fused with this piece of astral divine metal. Did you want to refine it in the sun-moon furnace to repair the broken sword?" Burial of Heaven said calmly, "I was unable to save you in time due to the sudden danger, and the exit was sealed up by the sun-moon divine flames, so I couldn't escape. Since I was in dire straits, I could only think of ways to protect myself. Originally, I planned on using this piece of astral divine metal to repair the sword once I reached the level of the soul. However, the situation has changed, so I can only try using it earlier." Ji Tianqing nodded and said sternly, "You've already been refined into liquid metal by the sun-moon divine flames, so you can't leave the sun-moon furnace. You can only use the divine metal to repair the sword. However, this piece of astral divine metal is the essence that has been refined by the divine flames for thousands of years. It probably won't be refined in a short period of time. How long do you need to refine this piece of astral divine metal and repair the sword?" Burial of Heaven was silent for a while, then said in a low voice, "At least half a month, at most a month. Furthermore, I may not succeed." Ji Tianqing immediately frowned, "At least half a month, and I may not succeed. Even if I have the protection of the heaven-mending pearl, I won't be able to last half a month before the power of the heaven-mending pearl is depleted. You can repair the broken sword in the furnace. I'll leave the furnace first and wait for you outside." Burial of Heaven was silent for a while, then said tentatively, "Tianqing, although the sun-moon furnace is very dangerous, it is still a divine weapon. If you can use it cleverly, you can achieve miraculous results. You being able to enter the sun-moon furnace can be considered as an opportunity and a fortuitous encounter. It would be a pity to leave just like that." Ji Tianqing was confused and asked doubtfully, "Then you mean I should continue to cultivate in the sun-moon furnace? That's too unreliable, isn't it?" Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, "In Kenshin's inheritance, there is a divine-level technique called the Galaxy Body Refining Art. When Kenshin reached the God realm, he cultivated this technique. He traveled freely in the galaxy, using the power of billions of stars to refine his body, and finally, he achieved the Supreme Divine Body. The overbearing power of the Supreme Divine Body made his physical strength and defense so powerful that no one could rival him. He could be said to be invincible in the same realm. With your current strength and talent, you definitely can't cultivate this Galaxy Body Refining Art. However, you are a variable. You keep creating miracles, and you have unlimited potential. Perhaps you can take a risk and use the power of the sun-moon furnace to cultivate this divine-level technique. Once you can cultivate this technique, you can refine the astral divine body. You will definitely be the best in your generation and dominate the world." Chapter 1269. The Burial of Heaven's words made Ji Tianqing's heart palpitate with excitement. The Galaxy Body Refinement Art, Kenshin's inherited secret art, a martial god-level divine art. After cultivating it, I can have the star divine body, be the best in my generation, and dominate the world. He muttered to himself as his eyes glowed with a bright light. Since there is such a heaven-sent opportunity, why wouldn't I dare to gamble? His eyes revealed a determined look, and he said in a solemn tone, "Burial of Heaven, how should I cultivate this divine art?" The burial of heaven said in a low voice, "It's very simple. I will teach you the introductory formula of this divine art, and you will use your heart to comprehend it. If you can learn it, you will have to be placed in the sun-moon furnace, burn your body with the sun-moon divine fire, and refine your body like steel. Don't be afraid of the sun-moon divine fire destroying your body. You will have to rely on the galaxy body refinement art, use the sun-moon divine fire reasonably, and temper your body thousands of times to greatly increase your strength. If you can't cultivate this divine art, the heaven-mending orb can protect you, at least you won't lose your life." Ji Tianqing certainly understood this, and the heaven-mending orb was his biggest reliance. He nodded and said in a low voice, "Okay, there is no time to lose. Teach me the galaxy body refinement art now, and I will start cultivating as soon as possible." The burial of heaven didn't say anything more, and immediately taught him the introductory formula of the divine art. The galaxy is far and wide, and there are millions of stars. Step on the stars, all-encompassing. The sun and moon compete to shine on the three halls, and the stars shine brightly. I have the power of 8,000 stars, and I can step on the stars and set the universe. Ji Tianqing held his breath and listened attentively. After the burial of heaven finished speaking, he memorized the 1,000 words of the formula. He had a photographic memory, and his comprehension was extraordinary. He recited the introductory formula in his heart, and after 3 to 5 times, he memorized it word for word. Then, he closed his eyes and tried to figure out the meaning of the formula word by word. If he encountered some obscure parts, he would ask the burial of heaven for advice. The burial of heaven was refining the blade and the divine gold while guiding him in his cultivation. It was not difficult to multitask. After a short day, Ji Tianqing, with the help of the burial of heaven, figured out the meaning of the introductory spell. If it were an ordinary soul refinement realm cultivator, it would take them at least 30 to 50 years to comprehend it. In fact, most people would never be able to understand the meaning of the incantation. Ji Tianqing spent another 3 days on his own. Only after he had thoroughly comprehended the 1,000-word incantation did he try to cultivate it. He controlled the power of the heaven-mending orb to form a layer of white light shield, protecting his meridians and internal organs. Only the surface of his burnt flesh was exposed to the sun-moon divine fire, enduring the burning and torment. In the beginning, he hadn't been able to use the galaxy body refining art to temper his flesh and skin. It was to the extent that he was burned to an extremely miserable state. The skin and flesh on his entire body had been charred, and countless black ashes had fallen off. The incomparable pain caused him to be in so much pain that he almost couldn't stay calm. However, his martial arts heart was exceptionally firm. In order to increase his strength, he could endure all the pain and torment. With his strong willpower and perseverance, he actually managed to persevere. Within 2 days, after thousands of repeated attempts, he finally figured out the trick to cultivating the galaxy body refining art. When he cultivated the incantation, he could derive a mysterious power that could effectively protect his body and strengthen it in the sun-moon divine fire. He finally succeeded in mastering the introductory spell. Of course, he also paid a heavy price for this. The skin and flesh on the surface of his body had been burned to black ashes and scattered in the furnace. At this time, only the inner layer of his flesh, meridians, bones, and internal organs were left. He looked pitch black, very miserable and frightening. However, he saw the hope of success. His spirit was lifted, and he felt that the pain he had suffered before was worth it. Then, he began to cultivate the galaxy body refining art with all his might, using the sun-moon divine fire to temper his flesh, meridians, and bones. In just 5 days, he had tempered his flesh and blood into a dazzling golden color, reaching an incomparably tough level. His defense and strength had increased by 10 times. 12 days later, he had finished tempering his meridians. All of his meridians had turned dark silver and were as tough as a top-grade soul weapon. Then, he used the sun-moon divine fire to temper his bones. The process of tempering the body in cultivating the galaxy body refining art had a set of steps. First, he would temper the skin, then the flesh, meridians, and then the bones. The last step was to temper the internal organs with the sun-moon divine fire. Once the internal organs were all tempered, the star divine body would be completed. It would be incomparably tough from the inside to the outside, reaching the limit of a soul-refining realm expert. Unknowingly, 20 days passed. Ji Tianqing had finished tempering his bones. Every bone in his body was golden and contained a divine power that could resist the attack of a top-grade soul weapon. He was immersed in the excitement of his strength skyrocketing. He forgot himself and cultivated the divine technique. He didn't feel any pain, nor did he have any intention to stop. He wanted to continue tempering his internal organs and cultivate the divine technique in one go. At this time, Burial of Heaven and the star divine gold had been refined for 20 days and finally fused a part of it. About half of the fist-sized divine gold essence had been refined. With the help of the sun-moon divine fire, it was fused into its sword body. This was despite the fact that the sword body that it had recondensed was still incomplete. However, the length of the broken sword had increased by 4 inches, reaching more than 2 feet. As long as the broken sword condensed a 3-inch long sword tip, it would be complete. Burial of Heaven stored the remaining divine gold essence into the sword world, saving it for the next time it repaired the sword body. Although the broken sword had become more complete after being repaired and refined, the power of the broken sword had more than doubled, and its quality had also increased by 1 level. Unfortunately, the broken sword had only reached the half-step primordial soul realm. In the end, it couldn't cross the threshold of the primordial soul realm and become a divine weapon. Burial of Heaven had long expected this result. It was very clear that in order to restore the broken sword to the primordial soul realm, not only did it need the star divine gold, it also needed 2 other top-notch materials. After completing the refinement, it wasn't in a hurry to leave. It still stayed in the sun-moon furnace. As it was being refined by the sun-moon divine fire, it continued to improve its power. At the same time, it was also looking after Ji Tianqing, who was cultivating, in case anything happened to him. Above the sun-moon furnace, the 1,000-meter-long black dragon was floating in the air. It looked down at the sun-moon furnace with a tired expression, and its eyes were filled with worry. Yin Yao, who was wearing a long white dress, stood on the black dragon's back as usual. Her long hair and white dress danced gently in the sea breeze. She stared at the whirlpool below without blinking, her eyes filled with worry and anxiety. After a long silence, she finally spoke. "Black Dragon, you stay here. I'm going to find Tianqing." The black dragon was shocked and quickly dissuaded her. "Miss Yun, don't be rash. You can't enter the sun-moon furnace without permission. Don't forget old Ji's instructions." Yin Yao said firmly, 20 days have passed. I've waited for 20 days. But Tianqing hasn't appeared. Even the sword of Burial of Heaven has disappeared. No matter what, I have to go down and see what's going on. If Tianqing is already dead, I'll accompany him to hell. Her expression was very firm, and her tone revealed her determination, leaving no room for doubt. The black dragon quickly flew away with her and persuaded her. "Miss Yun, I know that you've been worried about old Ji's safety for the past 20 days. You've been suffering every day. But you have to believe in old Ji. No matter how dangerous the sun-moon furnace is, he has the divine sword protecting him. How could he die so easily?" Chapter 1270. However, Yin Yao still had a glimmer of hope in her heart. For the past 20 days, she had been comforting herself. With Ji Tianqing's strength and powerful trump cards, he would be fine. However, Ji Tianqing still hadn't appeared. She couldn't wait any longer. No matter how the black dragon persuaded her, she insisted on entering the sun and moon furnace to check the situation herself. Swoosh! her figure flashed and she flew into the sky, heading straight for the giant whirlpool. In the blink of an eye, she flew above the whirlpool and dived down without caring about her own safety. She wanted to rush into the sun and moon furnace. However, at this moment, a muffled rumbling sound came from the furnace. The golden sun at the bottom of the sea bloomed with dazzling golden light, becoming extremely dazzling. Accompanied by the muffled rumbling sound, the sun and moon furnace below the whirlpool actually emitted an earth-shattering gold and silver flame, rolling and surging violently. In a short while, the entrance to the whirlpool was sealed by the sun and moon divine fire, making it impossible for anyone to get close. Without a doubt, it was noon again. The sun and moon divine fire's power had reached its limit and exploded again. Yunyao was shocked. She had to stop flying and quickly leave the sun and moon furnace. For the past 20 days, she had seen the sun and moon furnace explode twice a day with her own eyes. She knew how terrifying the sun and moon divine fire's power was. Once she entered the whirlpool, she would instantly be burned to ashes by the sun and moon divine fire. She would die without leaving a trace. Moreover, the eruption of the sun and moon divine fire this time was completely different from the previous 20 days. Its power was even more terrifying. The dazzling gold and silver light rushed out of the whirlpool and rolled up a few giant fire dragons in the sky, wreaking havoc. The seawater in the whirlpool was evaporated by the terrifying heat. The water vapor was especially dazzling under the light of the fire. Yunyao saw this strange scene and became more and more anxious. The black dragon quickly flew over and carried her dozens of miles away, waiting in the sky. Yunyao made up her mind. After 2 hours, when the sun and moon divine fire's power dissipated, she would enter the furnace to find Ji Tianqing. At the same time, in the sea thousands of miles away from the sun and moon furnace, 3 white-haired old men were speeding over the sea, heading straight for the west. The old man in the lead wore a dark purple robe with stars and clouds embroidered on it. His sleeves were inlaid with gold, and his style was very simple and mysterious. His figure was thin, and he wore a jade crown on his head. His long hair hung loosely behind his head, and his entire body emitted the aura of a secluded expert. Moreover, he had white hair and a ruddy complexion. His eyes were bright and deep, and it was obvious that he was an ancestor-level figure. Following closely behind the purple-robed elder was a white-robed elder. This person was tall and sturdy. Even though his hair was white and his face was full of wrinkles, he still exuded a valiant and dignified aura. As for the third old man, he was a sloppy old man wearing a black robe with a stooped back. On the surface, this person looked no different from an ordinary old man in the secular world. But in reality, this person's entire body was emitting soul power fluctuations, indicating that he was also a soul-refining realm expert. As the 3 of them flew across the sea, they were also whispering to each other. The white-robed elder sized up the black-robed elder, and his expression was not very good. He said in a low voice, "Ji Wuxia, although we cultivate martial arts wholeheartedly and only talk about martial arts and martial arts, we don't care about appearances. But you were fine before. You were originally a big man with a dignified appearance, but now you've become an old man. What kind of scandal is this? Our Du Tian sect is an ancient sect that has been passed down for thousands of years. As the direct disciple of the sect master, how can you humiliate our sect?" The black-robed elder was Ji Wuxia. When he heard the white-robed elder speak of this matter, he was also filled with anger and resentment. "Third elder, do you think I want to become like this? I was also forced to do this. It's all that little bastard Ji Tianqing's fault. He hid his strength so well and was so terrifying. I was heavily injured by him, and even my physical body was destroyed. Only my soul escaped. I can't just rely on my soul to escape back to the sect, right? If I were to find a place to heal, it would take at least 100 years to recover. So, while I was escaping, I casually caught an old man in the sky origin realm and used our sect's ancient secret technique to seize his body. I'll use this body for now. After we deal with that brat Ji Tianqing, I'll return to the sect to heal and recover my physical body. The dissatisfaction in the third elder's eyes dissipated. He nodded and said, "That's good too. The most important thing now is to find Murongzheng as soon as possible and see how he is." Although Murongzheng has already left the sect and returned to Central State to take over the family's power, he is still the sect master's most valued disciple. If anything happens to him, the sect master will definitely fly into a rage. Ji Wuxia was silent and did not speak. His expression was somewhat unnatural. Although what the third elder said was the truth, he was still unhappy and jealous in his heart. At this moment, the purple-robed elder flying in front said with a dignified expression, "Wuxia, our sect has been living in seclusion in the returning ruins and has not come out for 1,000 years. We don't understand the situation in Central State. Now that something like this has happened, the sect master sent me and the third elder out to uphold justice for you and Murongzheng. Why don't you tell me about the cause of this matter and what exactly happened? What is the background and strength of that brat called Ji Tianqing?" Ji Wuxia was very respectful to the purple-robed elder. He quickly bowed and said, "Left Guardian, the cause of this matter was the enmity between senior brother Murong and Ji Tianqing. 2 months ago, senior brother Murong sent me a message and asked me to help him kill a brat called Ji Tianqing. Later, when I arrived at Central State, I specially investigated that brat and found out that he was a peerless genius who had risen in recent years. Not only was he the #1 genius of the human race, but he was also the #1 prodigy of the monarch residence. He reached the spirit refinement realm at the age of 20. Not only that, the emperor of the human imperial court also thought highly of him. Even when he destroyed the Duanmu family, he did not punish him. Because of many disputes and conflicts of interest, Ji Tianqing became enemies with the Murong family and killed senior brother Murong's son, Murong Lingfeng. Therefore, senior brother Murong vowed to kill Ji Tianqing for revenge. However, Ji Tianqing's strength was too strong, and he also had powerful trump cards. Senior brother Murong wasn't completely confident, so he asked me to help and kill Ji Tianqing on the way. We did not expect that Ji Tianqing was such a monster. He was clearly only at the 3rd level of the spirit refinement realm, but after exchanging a few blows with me, he severely injured me and destroyed my body. The situation was critical and I could only run for my life. I could not care about senior brother Murong. After I took over his body and escaped danger, I sent him a message to ask about his situation. It was like a clay ox entering the sea and there was no reply. Chapter 1271. Ji Wuxia and the other 2 flew over the sea in a hurry. The 3 of them talked about Murongzheng for a bit, but they didn't come to a conclusion. After all, they couldn't contact Murongzheng, so they didn't know how he was doing right now. The most important thing right now was to get to the Central Plains as soon as possible and visit the Murong family. However, at this moment, Ji Wuxia accidentally saw a large flame appear in the sky to the northeast. He paused for a moment, then turned to look at the sea. He saw that there were gold and silver flames in the sky above the sea. He could vaguely see a few fire dragons flying in the sky. Not only that, but the sky around the flames also reflected a brilliant light. Ji Wuxia immediately frowned and said to the left protector and 3rd elder, "Left protector, 3rd elder, look over there. There seems to be something strange." The left protector and 3rd elder were worried about Murongzheng's safety, so they weren't interested in this. However, when they heard the shock in Ji Wuxia's voice, they subconsciously turned to look. When they saw the dazzling scene of flames, they all frowned, and a strange light flashed in their eyes. The 2 of them slowed down and stopped in the air above the sea. They looked towards the northeast and began to discuss in low voices. "Look at the location and direction of the flames. It seems to be where the sun-moon furnace is. This place is 10,000 miles away from the sun-moon furnace. The flames should be coming from the sun-moon furnace. The heaven-vanishing sect was in the depths of the returning ruins of the East Sea. It was only 300,000 miles away, not far from the sun-moon furnace. In reality, when the heaven-vanishing sect was first established, the people of the heaven-vanishing sect knew about the sun-moon furnace. The people of the heaven-vanishing sect all knew that the sun-moon furnace was a divine tool that gathered the divine power of heaven and earth. It had extremely strange effects and was also a very dangerous forbidden ground. However, it was a pity that even the strongest people of the heaven-vanishing sect could only wander around the sun-moon furnace. They couldn't enter the furnace at all. 800 years ago, the previous sect master reached the 9th level of the spirit refinement realm and had the strength of a half-step into the primordial spirit realm. He decided to explore the sun-moon furnace. He wanted to unravel the mysteries of the sun-moon furnace. Perhaps it would bring about great opportunities for the heaven evasion sect. But in the end, he was only able to last an hour inside the cauldron before 2 of his high-grade soul armaments were burned away and he was on the verge of death. Ever since then, the Du Tian sect had forbidden anyone from exploring the sun-moon furnace unless they reached the primordial spirit realm. Otherwise, no one was allowed to enter the sun-moon cauldron. Even the sea around the cauldron was forbidden. In the past few hundred years, the disciples of the heaven evasion sect had been abiding by their ancestral teachings and no longer explored the sun-moon furnace. They rarely even approached it. However, everyone was curious about the mysterious sun-moon furnace. At this moment, Ji Wuxia and the other 2 saw the flames near the sun-moon cauldron and their interest was piqued. After the 3 of them observed for a while, the 3rd elder said in a deep voice, "It's noon now. Every day at noon and midnight, the power of the sun-moon furnace will reach its strongest state. Even if the sun-moon furnace emits flames, it shouldn't be anything strange. We don't need to pay attention to it. What's important is to get down to business." Ji Wuxia nodded in agreement, "That's right." Even the previous head of the Du Tian sect, who was so powerful, was unable to discover the secrets of the sun-moon furnace. Even if there is something strange about the sun-moon furnace and it hides some shocking treasure, we can't do anything about it. The 2 of them didn't have any thoughts of going to check the situation, but the left protector didn't want to leave. He frowned and thought for a while. Then he said in a serious tone, "Of course I know. It's noon now, when the sun-moon furnace is at its peak. But in the past few hundred years, the sun-moon furnace's power has exploded twice a day, but it never emitted flames that soared into the sky. We can see the sun-moon divine fire illuminating the sky from thousands of miles away. This has never happened before. I dare say that something must have happened to the sun-moon furnace. Or maybe, an expert entered the sun-moon furnace and caused the flames to soar into the sky." Hearing him say this, the 3rd elder and Ji Wuxia were stunned. The 2 of them looked at each other, then turned to the left protector and asked, "Left protector, you mean?" The left protector squinted his eyes and said in a serious tone, "Since it's not far away, let's go and see what's going on. Even if I guess wrong and we don't find anything, it won't take much time." After saying this, the left protector flew towards the sun-moon furnace. The 3rd elder and Ji Wuxia didn't dare to disobey him, so they didn't try to persuade him and quickly followed him. After about 2 hours, the 3 of them flew over thousands of miles above the sea and finally arrived near the sun-moon furnace. When they were still 100 miles away, the 3 of them saw 2 huge black shadows on the sea in front of them. Those were 2 mountains that were 10,000 meters tall, standing on the sea. Between the 2 mountains, there was a huge whirlpool with a radius of 100 miles. The dazzling sun-moon divine fire shot out from the whirlpool and shone high up in the sky. The area within a radius of 100 miles was illuminated by the fire, dazzling and dazzling. The air was filled with a high temperature, causing the water vapor on the sea to rise. However, as the 3 of them got closer to the sun-moon furnace, the fire in the sky gradually dissipated. It was already afternoon. The power of the sun-moon furnace had been unleashed, and the sun-moon divine fire was about to calm down. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Ji Wuxia and the two of them flew across the sky and arrived above the sun-moon furnace after 100 breaths. The fire that covered the sky and the sun, as well as the huge fire dragons, all disappeared. The sun-moon furnace calmed down and returned to its normal state. Before the three of them could check the situation in the whirlpool and the furnace, they saw a huge figure that was 1,000 meters long floating in the sky near the whirlpool. It was a huge black dragon with a majestic body, and a lady in a white dress was standing on its back. Seeing this, the left protector, Ji Wuxia and the two of them instantly stopped in mid-air and revealed strange expressions. I didn't guess wrong. Someone really did break into the sun-moon furnace. Ha ha ha, the left protector is really wise. Someone actually came here and rode on a huge dragon. That looks like a black dragon. Could it be an expert from the water race imperial court? No, there's a human lady on the black dragon's back. That black dragon looks like her pet. It shouldn't be an expert from the water race. That scene of fire shooting into the sky must have been caused by them. Could it be that they discovered the secret of the sun-moon furnace? The three of them discussed secretly. They were all surprised and pleasantly surprised. The left protector stared at the black dragon and the lady in the white dress for a moment and said in a low voice, "If it's a black dragon from the water race imperial court, our Heaven Ascension sect can't easily provoke it." Chapter 1272. The Sky Vanishing Sect was a hidden sect that had been passed down for 2,000 to 3,000 years. In a sense, it was not wrong to call it an ancient sect. However, this ancient sect was not a righteous sect and would never boast about being righteous and kind. The left protector observed for a while and saw that the black dragon and the woman in white were only at the first or second level of the soul refinement realm. After all, the black dragon was a rare and powerful flood dragon. It was much stronger than the spiritual beasts raised by the Sky Vanishing sect. If the left protector could capture a black dragon to be the sect's divine beast, it would be a great contribution to the sect. Swoosh! The left protector flew out first and charged towards the black dragon as fast as lightning. The third elder and Ji Wuxia were also filled with anticipation. They smiled sinisterly and followed the left protector. The black dragon and Yunyao had already noticed the arrival of the three unfamiliar old men. They were on high alert. Yunyao knew that in the eastern sea's bottomless ruins, any unfamiliar strong cultivator could be an enemy. They could be even scarier than demons. Moreover, the three unfamiliar old men were very powerful. They were all at least at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. They also had sinister smiles on their faces. If it was any other day, she would definitely ask the black dragon to leave immediately. She would not meet them face to face to avoid trouble and conflict. However, Ji Tianqing was still in the sun-moon furnace. How could she leave so easily? In the blink of an eye, the left protector, Ji Wuxia, and the other two flew close to the black dragon and stopped. The three of them spread out and surrounded the black dragon. Their eyes were filled with greed. Ji Wuxia sized up the black dragon a few times before his gaze landed on Yunyao, carefully observing her. When he saw Yunyao's face clearly, his expression instantly changed, and a gloomy cold light flashed in his eyes. "It's actually you." The left protector and the third elder were stunned. They turned to look at him in confusion. "Ji Wuxia, do you know her?" Ji Wuxia sneered and said in a low voice, "Of course I know her. This woman in white was Ji Tianqing's companion. When senior brother Murong and I joined hands to kill Ji Tianqing, this woman was traveling with Ji Tianqing and even blocked my sword for him." The left protector and the third elder were enlightened when they heard this. The cold light in their eyes became even sharper. He. So it's Ji Tianqing's woman. That's good. It's really a case of searching high and low only to find it by chance. We were just about to go to Zhongzhou to settle the score with Ji Tianqing, but we didn't expect to meet his companions here. The heavens are really helping us." As he spoke, the left protector and the third elder drew their swords. Their bodies were filled with powerful auras as they gradually approached the Black Dragon. Black Dragon realized that something was wrong. His gaze turned cold as he growled in an icy tone, "What do you want?" The left protector grinned and a playful sneer appeared on her rosy and fair face. "What are you doing? Don't you know what we are doing?" The third elder also sneered and shouted in an icy tone, "You evil dragon, how dare you trespass into our sex-forbidden area? How should you be punished?" The Black Dragon was puzzled and asked subconsciously, "Your sex-forbidden area? Which sect are you from?" "Humph. You don't have the right to know our sect's name." The third elder shouted arrogantly. "You only need to know that the 500,000-mile radius around our sect is our sect's territory. This sun-moon furnace is our sect's forbidden area. You trespassed into our forbidden area and should be punished with death." The Black Dragon immediately understood that the other party was making up a lie to find an excuse. Yun Yao, who was on the Black Dragon's back, looked gloomy as she drew her cold moon sword silently. Although the conversation between Ji Wuxia, the left protector and the third elder wasn't loud, she had heard it clearly. She held her sword and emitted a chilling aura. She stared coldly at Ji Wuxia and sized him up carefully. She didn't understand why the black-robed assassin had turned into a sloppy old man when he was clearly a middle-aged man. However, she used a secret technique to sense the aura of Ji Wuxia's soul and confirmed that they were the same person. "This world is really small. I can't believe that I met you here, you bastard. Back then, you conspired with Murongzheng to kill us. Now, you've brought your helpers and chased us here. You're really despicable." Ji Wuxia saw that she had recognized his identity and didn't try to hide it anymore. He sneered proudly. He. You're a smart girl, and your innate talent is also top-notch. No wonder you can become Ji Tianqing's wife. Since you already know my identity, then obediently throw down your sword and surrender. You and this Black Dragon are no match for us. You'll only die if you try to resist." The left protector and the third elder also shed all pretense of cordiality. They no longer pretended to be experts. Both of them looked murderous as they stared at the Black Dragon and Yun Yao. "This little girl is Ji Tianqing's wife. Since that's the case, she and this Black Dragon have to stay here. We can't let any of them go. This little girl is really good. Not only is she beautiful, but she's also very talented. She's much better than the geniuses in our sect. Ji Wuxia, I'll make the decision for you. After we catch this little girl, we'll bring her back to our sect to be your wife." Hearing the left protector's words, Ji Wuxia was overjoyed. His eyes shone with excitement. Originally, he thought that the left protector would take Yun Yao as his wife when he saw the left protector's gleaming eyes. However, he didn't expect that the left protector would bestow Yun Yao to him. This was a huge surprise for him. He was afraid that the left protector would go back on her words, so he quickly bowed and thanked her. "Thank you for your kindness, left protector. As long as this matter is completed, I'll serve you for the rest of my life." The third elder also had an envious expression. He looked at Yun Yao with a complicated expression and exclaimed, "Ji Wuxia, you're really lucky. You have to treat the left protector well in the future. This little girl is as beautiful as a fairy and has great talent. Even though I've lived for hundreds of years, I've never seen such a beautiful girl." The left protector stroked his beard in satisfaction and laughed. "Then it's decided. That little girl belongs to Ji Wuxia and this Black Dragon belongs to me." Hearing this, the third elder and Ji Wuxia were both stunned. The two of them finally understood that the left protector's ambition was even bigger. She wanted to take the Black Dragon for herself. This way, even though she said that she wanted to take the Black Dragon for the Du Tian sect, it was actually for the left protector herself. However, the third elder and Wuxia didn't dare to go against her and didn't show any signs of dissatisfaction. The three of them didn't waste any time. They immediately exploded with powerful spiritual energy and surrounded the Black Dragon and Yunyao. The left protector and the third elder waved their swords and slashed out a few giant blades towards the Black Dragon. Chapter 1273. Above the Sun-Moon Furnace, a great battle was about to break out. Both sides had only exchanged a single blow before the Black Dragon was sent flying by the combined attacks of the left protector and the third elder. It had separated from Yunyao. Both of them were enduring the destructive attacks as they continuously retreated into the distance. Although the Black Dragon had awakened its divine beast bloodline and inherited Long Yuan's magic power and battle skills, it was very powerful and was comparable to a cultivator in the third or fourth level of the soul refinement realm. However, the third elder was in the fifth level of the soul refinement realm and the left protector was in the seventh level of the soul refinement realm. No matter how powerful the Black Dragon was, it was definitely not a match for the two of them. After exchanging 3 blows with the two of them, its body was slashed by a few sword lights. A few large blood grooves appeared on its back and dragon blood gushed out crazily. It knew that it was not a match for the two of them, so it turned around and fled without hesitation. Of course, it did this to avoid the attacks and also to draw the left protector and the third elder away to reduce the pressure on Yunyao. The left protector saw it turn around and laughed proudly. Ha ha ha. You evil dragon still want to escape. Wishful thinking. As he spoke, he unleashed all his power and used a secret technique to teleport. His figure flashed and he was 10 miles away as he chased after the Black Dragon. 10 Ultimate Dragon Slaying Sword. The left protector roared and used all his strength to swing his sword. He slashed out 9 giant white swords that contained the power of the divine soul. The Black Dragon sensed danger and sped up desperately to escape. Despite that, it barely dodged the 5 sword lights, but it was still struck by the other 4 sword lights. With a series of peng 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 sounds, 4 large wounds appeared on its body. Dark golden dragon bones were exposed and black dragon blood gushed out. The powerful impact caused it to tumble and fly out. The intense pain made it open its mouth and let out a shrill and angry dragon roar. Seeing the left protector and the third elder chasing after it, it was forced to use a forbidden secret technique. World-destroying dragon breath. It suddenly opened its huge dragon mouth and spat out endless black flames. It was like a flood that poured towards the third elder and the left protector. That pitch-black and mysterious flame was its black dragon's breath, and also its most powerful trump card. Once it breathed out a large amount of dragon breath, regardless of the result, whether or not it could injure the left protector and the third elder, its vitality would be greatly damaged. It would definitely fall into a weakened state and would need to recuperate for a long time to recover. Fortunately, the left protector and the third elder had been too confident and underestimated the Black Dragon's battle prowess. The two of them were too close to each other and had no time to dodge. They were drowned by the World Annihilation Dragon Breath. Shwa! Their protective mana was immediately destroyed by the World Annihilating Dragon Breath and exploded into countless pieces. The strength of the third elder was relatively weak. Not only was his magical power shield destroyed by the World Annihilation Dragon Breath, several large parts of his body were also scorched. His entire right arm was charred black. His head and face were covered in ash, and his hair was charred black and curly. He looked extremely miserable. The intense pain caused him to go berserk. He let out a few hysterical curses and charged towards the Black Dragon without regard for anything else. The left protector was the strongest. Even if the World Annihilation Dragon Breath destroyed his mana shield, it did not hurt his physical body. After all, he still had a high-grade soul artifact to protect himself. When the World Annihilation Dragon Breath dissipated, the Black Dragon had already used this opportunity to escape hundreds of kilometers away. He had temporarily shaken off the left protector and the third elder. The two of them were furious. They immediately exploded with their fastest speed and chased after the black dragon. Damn you, evil dragon. You actually have such powerful techniques. Since that's the case, I will definitely not let you go. I will definitely capture you and make you my mount. The left protector stared at the black dragon with a dark gaze and murmured in a chilling tone. The two of them chased after the black dragon and flew towards the northwest. In just a short while, they disappeared into the horizon without a trace. Around 80 kilometers away from the sun-moon cauldron, Wuxia was fighting with Yun Yao in the sky. The two of them had already exchanged over a dozen blows. Yun Yao fought as she retreated. She was already 80 kilometers away from the sun-moon cauldron. Even though she was a genius and had fused with the divine power of the Neptunian divine pearl, she possessed extraordinary battle prowess. However, Wuxia was an expert at the fifth level of the soul refinement realm after all. He was much stronger than her. Ever since the two of them started fighting, she had been suppressed by Wuxia. After a dozen blows, she had already suffered 3 sword wounds. Her white dress was stained with blood. Wuxia's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. His figure flickered in the sky as he constantly launched sneak attacks and assassinations from various directions. Yun Yao was unable to fight him head-on. She could only use her astral eyes to protect herself as she constantly retreated into the distance. Whoosh! Suddenly, a dazzling white light appeared out of nowhere in the sky 1,000 meters to her left. The white light was like a long and narrow blade. It instantly tore through the sky and struck Yun Yao. Yun Yao sensed that something was wrong, but she was unable to dodge in time. At this critical moment, she could only hold the frost moon sword to her side. With a clang sound, the white light blade struck the cold moon sword. The extremely powerful impact immediately sent her flying. Her face paled as blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. That white light immediately disappeared into the sky. The surroundings became empty again. Wuxia used a secret technique to hide himself. He hid in the sky near Yun Yao. He even sneered proudly. "Little beauty, stop resisting. You can't beat me. Ji Tianqing, that brat, will definitely die. You are destined to become a little widow. But don't worry, I can't bear to kill you. I will bring you back to the sect to be my wife and love you." Ha 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 ha. Wuxia laughed evilly. His voice was filled with mockery and evil. Yun Yao was instantly disgusted. She was embarrassed and angry. Her entire body emitted a cold killing intent. Wuxia. You short-lived old bastard. How dare you be so despicable? Now that my husband isn't here, a clown like you dares to be so arrogant. If my husband comes out of seclusion, he will definitely kill you with one sword. He will tear you into pieces. Seeing that Yun Yao was unable to restrain her anger and yet helpless despair, Wuxia laughed even more arrogantly. Ha 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 ha. Ji Tianqing will definitely die. In the future, I will be your husband. Don't tell me you still want to kill your husband. Little beauty, don't even think about escaping. I will love you now. Following his words, a white light suddenly lit up in the sky 1,000 meters behind Yun Yao. That white light was 10 meters long. It was like a huge sword. It carried an indestructible sword aura and stabbed towards Yun Yao. Yun Yao was already prepared. She immediately manipulated her star Dharma eye and turned it into a 30 feet wide defensive barrier. She blocked behind her. Bam! Amidst the loud sound, the silver light barrier was blasted away. The huge white light sword also exploded. Yun Yao's body shook again. Fresh blood flowed out of her mouth. Her soul was also injured. She felt dizzy. She forcefully endured the worsening of her injuries and unleashed all of her magic power to escape into the distance without a care for anything else. Chapter 1274. Unknowingly, 25 days had passed. It was noon again, the time when the sun-moon cauldron's power erupted. Inside the cauldron, the gold and silver sun-moon divine fire were surging wildly. Endless divine fire surged out and sealed the cauldron's entrance. The temperature inside the cauldron had reached its limit, and the power of the sun-moon divine fire was terrifying. However, Ji Tianqing, who was naked, was quietly floating in the cauldron. His eyes were closed, and he felt no pain at all in the surging sun-moon divine fire. Half a month ago, his skin and flesh had been charred black like charcoal. Now, his body had returned to its original state, and his skin was shining with a faint silver light. The flesh and bones under his skin had been tempered by the sun-moon divine fire, and they had become extremely powerful, shining with a bright golden light. Without a doubt, he had finally mastered the galaxy body tempering art and strengthened his body to the limit of the soul tempering realm. Even a top-grade soul weapon might not be able to hurt his body. Because of this, he could stay in the sun-moon divine fire as easily as taking a bath in a hot spring. At this moment, he had reached the final stage of his cultivation, and he was only one step away from mastering the galaxy body tempering art. He could use the power of the sun-moon divine fire to complete the last step of tempering. As time passed, the power of the sun-moon divine fire continued to increase, and it surged like a flood. He focused on his cultivation, and with the help of the sun-moon divine fire, he tempered and strengthened his body on a deeper level. In the air 1,000 meters away from him, a sword as red as fire was also floating in the divine fire. It was the broken sword, the burial of heaven. After 25 days of tempering and strengthening, all the impurities in the broken sword had been removed, and it had reached a perfect state. Although the sword was still missing the tip, the broken sword was already a half-step divine weapon, and its power and effects were terrifying. Soon, 2 hours passed. The sun-moon divine fire gradually calmed down, and the surging waves of fire gradually dissipated. The temperature in the cauldron also dropped rapidly. Ji Tianqing had finally finished his cultivation, and his body was completely tempered. He abruptly opened his eyes, and 2 terrifying beams of golden light shot out from his eyes. They were like sharp swords that sliced through the divine fire of the sun and moon in front of him, creating 2 giant cracks. Gold and silver flames ignited all over his body, exuding an incomparably violent and domineering aura. At this moment, his aura was so strong that it was comparable to that of a primordial soul stage cultivator. He was like a peerless sovereign looking down on all living beings. He spat out a puff of murky air that turned into a golden flame. It extended like a dragon with terrifying power. After suffering, I endured the burning of the sun and moon divine flames for 25 days. After enduring the extreme pain and torment, I finally reached the large success stage and reached the 5th level of the soul refining realm. Ji Tianqing murmured to himself. His eyes were filled with gratification and anticipation. With my current strength and my many trump cards, even if I encounter an expert at the 8th or 9th level of the soul refining stage, I can still fight. Broken Sword, who was not far away, saw that he had woken up and immediately flew to his side. The voice of the burial of heaven sounded in his mind. It said with gratification, "Tianqing, you did not disappoint me. You managed to cultivate the introductory cultivation method of the galaxy body tempering art with your strength in the soul refining realm. Although you are still a few realms away from the astral divine body, with the strength of your body now, you can be said to be invincible in the soul refining realm. With such a tyrannical body, if you continue to cultivate the sword soul Tao, you will be invincible and crush the prodigies and transcendence of the current era. At most, in half a year, I'm afraid that only primordial soul stage cultivators will be able to fight you." Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a low voice, "In the past, when I faced the imperial tutor, it was like looking up at a tall mountain. The pressure was immense and unapproachable. But now, if I were to fight the imperial tutor, even if I can't defeat him, I can at least last 100 moves." After a pause, he looked up at the sun-moon cauldron and said in a low voice, we have been in seclusion in the cauldron for 25 days. Yao Yao and the little black dragon must be waiting anxiously. Let's go, we should go out to prevent them from worrying. With that, he held the fiery red broken sword and flew toward the entrance of the vortex. Whoosh! With a flash of golden light, Ji Tianqing left the sun-moon cauldron with the crimson broken sword and rushed out of the giant vortex. No matter how strong the vortex's devouring power was, it could no longer stop him. After 2 breaths, he flew to the top of the vortex and stopped at a height of 10,000 feet to look around. He looked around and found that it was empty. He immediately frowned in confusion. Where did Yao Yao and the little black dragon go? The burial of heaven was also looking around. Seeing that there was no one in a radius of 200 miles, he subconsciously said, "We have wasted too much time. Maybe they couldn't wait and left first." Impossible. Ji Tianqing shook his head and said in a certain tone, "If I didn't appear, Yao Yao wouldn't have left so easily. Could it be that they have encountered some trouble?" The burial of heaven said in a low voice, "That's very likely. After all, this is the Eastern Sea's returning ruins, the most dangerous forbidden area on the continent. Anything can happen here." Ji Tianqing's brows furrowed tightly. His expression turned gloomy and his eyes flashed with a cold light. Without hesitation, he took out a jade slip and sent a message to Yun Yao. Whoosh! The communication jade turned into a stream of light and quickly disappeared into the sky. While waiting for Yun Yao's reply, Ji Tianqing roamed around the sun-moon cauldron and released his divine soul power to search for the aura of the little black dragon and Yun Yao. After about 100 breaths, a stream of light came from the northern sky and fell into his palm. He opened his palm and saw that it was Yun Yao's reply. He inserted his divine soul power and read the message in the jade slip. There was only one sentence from Yun Yao in the jade slip. Her tone was angry and anxious, and her voice was a little weak. "Tianqing, I'm being chased by Ji Wuxia of the Heaven sect. I'm escaping to the north and haven't been able to shake him off. The little black dragon is also being chased by 2 powerful cultivators. I haven't heard from him yet." Suddenly seeing this message, Ji Tianqing's expression changed. His eyes flashed with killing intent and his body surged with killing intent. Heaven sect. Ji Wuxia. Isn't that bastard the black-clothed assassin who helped Morongzheng assassinate me? Didn't I destroy his physical body? How did he find this place? He even brought 2 powerful cultivators with him to kill us. Extreme anger and killing intent caused Ji Tianqing's body to emit a cold aura. A blood-red flame of killing intent even condensed above his head. Ji Wuxia, you're dead meat. If I catch you, I'll burn you to ashes. And the Heaven sect, I'll pay you back 10 times over. Ji Tianqing shouted angrily. He quickly put away the jade slip and the broken sword. He summoned his divine soul power sword and flew to the north. Whoosh! Chapter 1275. Whoosh! Ji Tianqing, who was standing on his white sword, shot across the sky like a shooting star as he sped towards the north. His speed was extremely fast and he could travel 10 miles in a single breath. Even a 9th-level spirit refinement realm cultivator would be unable to catch up with such an exaggerated speed. He only used a short day to travel 600,000 miles and arrived at a sea filled with ice mountains. It had already been 5 days since Yun Yao was being chased by Ji Wuxia. Ji Tianqing estimated that even if the 2 of them tried their best to escape and chase, they would only be able to travel 600,000 miles at most. Therefore, he firmly believed that as long as Yun Yao and Ji Wuxia weren't dead, they would definitely be in this sea of ice. He used a day to travel what others would take 5 or 6 days to travel. Of course, he used up a lot of his magic power and was mentally and physically exhausted. However, he forced his weary body to fly in the glacial sea area, searching for traces of Yun Yao. He had the rhino bracelet on him. If he was close to Yunyao, they would be able to sense each other within 10,000 miles. With this, he firmly believed that he would be able to find Yunyao very quickly. The evening sky was a bit dark and gray clouds and fog filled the sky. Even the biting cold sea breeze couldn't blow them away. Huge icebergs floated on the dark blue surface of the sea, moving slowly and silently. Some of the ice mountains were squarish and very wide. Some of the ice mountains were sharp and protruding like icicles and swords. The howling northern wind blew, bringing with it a bone-piercing chill as it headed south. Ji Tianqing flew above the sea with a gloomy expression. He released his divine sense to search the surroundings and constantly paid attention to the changes in the rhino bracelet. In such a harsh environment, Yunyao was being chased by Ji Wuxia and seemed to be heavily injured. She was in a very dangerous situation. Ji Tianqing's heart was filled with worry and anxiety. He didn't know how long Yunyao could last and where she was hiding right now. If Yunyao was really killed by Ji Wuxia, it would be too late for regrets. Even if he killed Ji Wuxia for revenge, killing everyone in Heaven Evasion sect would be useless. At that moment, he hated the fact that he did not have the strength of an Essence Soul Realm cultivator. He could use his Essence Soul avatar to kill his enemies from 50,000 kilometers away. Time passed bit by bit, and the sky grew darker and darker. Night was about to fall. Ji Tianqing searched for 4 hours, but he still couldn't find Yunyao. Even the Lingxi bracelet didn't sense anything. Looking at the night sky that was getting darker and darker, and the bright moon and stars that appeared one after another in the night sky, he sighed helplessly, filled with grief and anger. Yao Yao, where are you? No matter how difficult it is, you must persevere. I will come to save you soon. At this moment, he suddenly noticed that in the night sky to the northwest, there were specks of light descending like rain. However, he was very far away from the sky and could only see some hazy light. Even so, he could still tell that it was clearly the power of the moon and stars. Seeing this, he was stunned. Immediately, his eyes flickered with light as a sliver of joy appeared in his eyes. The power of the moon and stars. Could it be Yao Yao? She possesses the Neptunian divine orb and possesses mysterious power. Her innate affinity is related to the stars as well. The starlight might be related to her. She's not dead yet, so it's very likely that she's in that region. Thinking up to there, he flew towards the starlight without any hesitation. Although he could see the light of the moon and stars in the night sky, he was actually tens of thousands of kilometers away from that region. After flying for 40,000 kilometers, he arrived in that region of the sea. The hazy starlight in the night sky had already dispersed, and it had returned to silence and darkness. Ji Tianqing flew above the sea as he searched anxiously. A while later, he suddenly saw the Lingxi bracelet light up with a hazy light as it flickered silently. Fantastic! Yao Yao really is in this region of the sea. She's within 10,000 kilometers of here. He immediately invaded it with his spiritual energy and carefully sensed the changes in the Lingxi bracelet as he searched for the location of the other Lingxi bracelet. In just 10 breaths' time, he found the location of the other Lingxi bracelet and quickly flew over on his sword. While tracking the Lingxi bracelet, he found that Yunyao's location was constantly changing. Clearly, she had been flying all this time. He could only unleash even more magic power and fly towards Yunyao at an even faster speed. About an hour later, he finally caught up with Yunyao. Using the Lingxi bracelet's sensing ability, he found that Yunyao was just a few hundred kilometers away. At the same time, the dark night sky in front of him suddenly lit up with a skyrocketing magic power brilliance. Silver-white moonlight blades cut through the night sky like lightning. There were dozens of blazing white spiritual energy swords as they shuttled and flashed through the sky at an extremely fast speed. Immediately after, the moonlight blades collided with the spiritual energy swords and exploded into a dazzling white brilliance that covered the night sky, illuminating hundreds of kilometers of the night sky. Soon after, a series of muffled bang 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 sounds came from the distant night sky. Ji Tianqing certainly knew that Ji Wuxia must have caught up with Yun Yao and that the two of them were fighting fiercely. His heart immediately tightened as he sped up with all his might. Swoosh! In just a few hundred breaths' time, he had flown more than 800 kilometers away and finally caught up with Yun Yao and Ji Wuxia. He rushed into the battlefield. When he was still 20 kilometers away, he could clearly see that Yun Yao, who was dressed in white, was fighting fiercely with a black-robed old man in the sky. Yun Yao's white dress was stained with blood and most of it had turned dark red. Her hair was disheveled and she looked very miserable. Her movements were a little inconvenient and her sword technique was no longer agile. It was a little stiff and jerky. It was obvious that her injuries were too severe and her magic power was about to be exhausted. The black-robed old man who was fighting with her was still full of magic power. His figure appeared and disappeared in the night sky as he shuttled back and forth like a ghost and attacked continuously. The sword techniques that the two of them used kept colliding with each other. Violent energy waves exploded and formed a terrifying hurricane above the sea. Even the icebergs that were floating nearby were sliced into pieces by the sword chi and turned into countless huge ice blocks that floated on the sea. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing was filled with rage and a strong murderous intent surged from his eyes. Although he did not understand why Ji Wuxia had become a sloppy black-robed old man, he did not care about these details. However, he didn't care about these details at all. With a roar, he rushed into the battlefield. Ji Wuxia! You old man, you shameless bastard, how dare you attack my wife when I am not at home? A filthy old man like you, I will tear you into pieces tonight and use your blood as a sacrifice to my divine sword. The sound waves were like muffled thunder, exploding in the night sky and spreading in all directions. When Yun Yao heard this familiar voice, she immediately revealed a look of pleasant surprise. Her pretty face that was as pale as paper revealed an expression of relief. Ji Wuxia, who was originally full of murderous intent and arrogant, suddenly shook. His expression changed drastically and a strong sense of fear appeared in his eyes. Chapter 1276. Ji Tianqing did not want to waste any time. As he shouted angrily, he charged behind Ji Wuxia like an aurora. Draw your sword. Without any hesitation, he pulled out his black broken sword and slashed at Ji Wuxia who was 1,000 meters away. The moment the half-step god equipment broken sword was drawn, it drew out a white sword light that was 100 feet long. It was like a giant sword that could split the heavens and earth apart. It was also like lightning that descended from the heavens. In just an instant, the sword light was behind Ji Wuxia and drowned his body. The bright sword light clearly illuminated his body and the terrified expression on his aged face. His heart was filled with despair as he cast a secret technique without a care in the world. He condensed a shield of spiritual energy to protect himself. Furthermore, he placed his two dark green curved blades in front of him in an attempt to block Ji Tianqing's sword. Bam! Following a heaven-shaking explosion, the magic power shield collapsed and Ji Wuxia was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. His body was bent at a weird angle as if his waist was bent in half. His spine and waist bones were broken. The two blades in his hands were also sent flying as he fell towards the sea. Back then, Ji Tianqing was only at the 3rd level of the spirit refinement realm and he destroyed his body in 3 moves. Now that Ji Tianqing was at the 5th level of the spirit refinement realm, he was at the same level as him and his battle prowess was more than 5 times stronger than him. Ji Tianqing's sword technique severely injured Ji Wuxia. He was still flying in midair when Ji Tianqing turned into a ray of light and charged over. He waved his sword and stabbed over. Stab sword. With a point of the sword, a dazzling cold light appeared and flashed in the night sky. In the next instant, the extremely condensed light exploded in Ji Wuxia's body and gave off a bright moonlight. Bam! Without a doubt, Ji Wuxua's body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood, creating a rain of dark red blood. Boundless white sword light spread out like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, enveloping a radius of dozens of kilometers. The night sky was illuminated, and the sea surface and icebergs in this area also reflected a dazzling brilliance, appearing exceptionally gorgeous. The violent hurricane spread out in all directions, engulfing everything within a radius of several hundred miles before gradually dissipating. Ji Wuxua's corporeal body was destroyed and only a ball of blazing white divine soul was left. He was also severely injured and still wanted to escape. He was already scared out of his wits and didn't have the slightest will to fight any longer. He only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible and get away from this devil, Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing immediately chased after him. With a wave of his sword, he was about to slay his divine soul and completely exterminate him. At this moment, Yun Yao, who was not far away, shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stop! Tianqing, don't kill him." Ji Tianqing trusted her without any reservations. Without asking for the reason, he kept his broken sword and struck out a huge golden palm towards Ji Wuxua's soul. Shua! Ji Wuxua couldn't resist at all. He was immediately caught by the golden palm and brought back to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing grabbed his divine soul tightly. No matter how he struggled, he couldn't break free at all. At this moment, the battle finally ended. Yun Yao had been chased for 6 days and 6 nights. She had been on the brink of death and fainted countless times. She had suffered extremely severe injuries. Now, everything had ended. She was finally free from the torment. She used her last bit of magic power and flew to Ji Tianqing's side. She said in an extremely weak voice, "Tianqing, don't be in a hurry to kill him. He still has use for us. The little black dragon is being chased by the Yuntian sect's protectors and elders. Until now, there has been no news of him. We don't know if he's dead or alive." After saying this, she couldn't hold on any longer. Her eyes slowly closed and she fainted on the spot. Ji Tianqing hurriedly reached out to grab her waist and pulled her into his embrace. Then, he landed on a huge ice mountain and placed Yun Yao flat on the ice. He struck out with his palm and injected a huge amount of magic power into her body. At this moment, he could finally check on Yun Yao's injuries in detail. Yun Yao's white dress was mostly dyed dark red by blood. It was a ghastly sight. There were at least 30 wounds on her body. Half of them hadn't healed yet and were still losing blood. There were also many wounds where the white bones could be seen clearly. It was obvious how deep the wounds were. There were even a few wounds near her heart and neck. They almost destroyed her physical body. Such severe injuries made Ji Tianqing's heart ache. At the same time, he was furious and filled with killing intent. He wanted nothing more than to let Ji Wuxua reform his body and kill him 100 times. In addition, not only was Yun Yao severely injured, but the magic power in her body was also exhausted. Her divine soul was also very weak. Her star Dharma eyes were also damaged and needed a long time to recover. Ji Tianqing suppressed his anger and killing intent. He used the secret technique of the Wooden Emperor umbrella to heal Yun Yao's injuries and injected a huge amount of magic power into her. About 6 hours later, he finally treated Yun Yao's physical injuries. Yun Yao was fine for now. Her physical injuries would be healed by the green wood true qi in 3 to 5 days. However, her magic power and divine soul injuries would take more than half a month to recover. Ji Tianqing sent Yun Yao into the sword world and let her heal in the secret chamber in Unta City. Then, he stared at Ji Wuxua's divine soul in his palm and started to deal with this bastard. His entire body was emitting a cold aura that was 10 times colder than the glaciers and icebergs on the sea. He stared at Ji Wuxua's divine soul and said in a cold tone, "Ji Wuxua, last time you and Murongzheng tried to kill me, you severely injured my wife. She needed more than half a month to recover. Now, you chased after her for 6 days and 6 nights and injured her so severely. Tell me, how should I torture you to relieve the hatred in my heart?" As he spoke, Ji Tianqing's divine soul energy surged out of his palm and condensed into dozens of white light spikes. He crazily stabbed Ji Wuxia's soul. The spikes condensed from the white light of the divine soul were a special method to deal with the divine soul of a martial artist. They were as thin as hair but had unparalleled penetrative power. More than 80 divine soul spikes pierced Ji Wuxia more than 1,000 times in just 10 breaths. His divine soul was pierced full of holes. He struggled and rolled around desperately, letting out an incomparably miserable and painful shriek. This kind of pain that pierced the divine soul was 10 times more painful than death by 1,000 cuts. Ji Wuxia was in so much pain that he wanted to die. He couldn't wait to explode on the spot and end this hellish torture. When the divine soul spike stopped, his divine soul rolled around for a long time before it calmed down. Using the divine soul technique, he said to Ji Tianqing, "Ji Tianqing, kill me if you have the guts. However, if you kill me, you will never know the whereabouts of that black dragon. It will definitely be captured by the left guardian and the third elder. It will be reared like an animal and become our sect's guard dog." Chapter 1277. Of course, Ji Wuxia knew that if he fell into Ji Tianqing's hands, he would definitely die. If he begged for mercy and cowardly, not only would he not be able to escape death, he would also lose all his face. If that was the case, he might as well be more stubborn. Perhaps he would still have a chance to live. Ji Tianqing's left hand held his soul tightly as he stared at him coldly. He said in a low voice, "Ji Wuxia, you should know that if you fall into my hands, it will be difficult for you to die even if you want to." His voice was low and cold, causing Ji Wuxia's soul to feel cold. A chill came from the depths of his soul. Ji Wuxia remained silent as he pondered how to escape. Ji Tianqing asked expressionlessly, the left protector and third elder were chasing after the little black dragon. "Where did they go? Where is the Heaven Evasion sect? If you know what's good for you, tell me the truth. Otherwise, I will make you wish you were dead." Ji Wuxia knew that it would be difficult for him to escape. His only hope of escaping was the left protector and the Heaven Evasion sect. Ji Tianqing taking the initiative to ask was exactly what he wanted. He hurriedly replied, "At the time, they flew towards the northwest. As for the location of our sect, so what if I tell you? Do you dare to attack the Heaven Evasion sect in order to save that black dragon? Ha ha ha, let me tell you the truth. There is no need for our sect master or grand elder to act. The left and right protectors can easily crush you. You talk too much." Ji Tianqing's tone was cold as he shouted. A few divine soul spikes condensed in his palm as he ruthlessly stabbed towards Ji Wuxia. Ah! Several holes appeared in Ji Wuxia's soul. He immediately howled in pain and fainted. Ji Tianqing grabbed his soul and flew across the night sky at lightning speed, heading back to the Sun and Moon Great Furnace. 14 hours later, he returned to the Sun and Moon Furnace and chased towards the northwest. He flew through the sky like a streak of light, searching for traces of the little black dragon along the way. He searched for traces of the divine dragon in the sky. However, after searching for half a day, he did not find any clues. As he searched, he silently calculated, it's already been 7 days since the incident. The little black dragon is most likely dead. If it still hadn't been caught, it would definitely still be on the run, already a million li away. If it's already been captured, then it's most likely been brought back to Heaven Evasion sect. Thinking of this, he shouted at Ji Wuxia, "Ji Wuxia, what is the cultivation level of the left protector and third elder?" Ji Wuxia's divine soul was riddled with scars. He was already on the verge of death from the torture. He wanted to play dead and not answer, but Ji Tianqing cut him a few more times with the sharp blade of his divine soul, and the pain made him want to kill himself. After struggling and twitching for a while, he became much more obedient. His voice was weak as he said intermittently, "You want to take the black dragon back from the left protector?" That was simply wishful thinking. The left protector is the third strongest person in the sect. His strength has reached the 7th level of the soul refinement realm. Even the third elder was at the 5th level of the soul refinement stage. Our heaven evasion sect strength is not something you can imagine. I advise you to let me go, otherwise your fate will be. Before he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing's hand viciously squeezed, causing his divine soul to creak. Ji Wuxia let out a miserable cry of pain. After a few howls, he fell into a muddled state. Ji Tianqing's face was gloomy as he flew. He continued to calculate, one at the 7th level of the soul refinement realm and the other at the 5th level of the soul refinement realm. Even if the little black dragon didn't hesitate to use its life, it wouldn't be able to escape from those two. There definitely wouldn't be a miracle. The little black dragon must have been captured by those two and brought back to Heaven Evasion Sect. Thinking of this, he turned around and flew towards Heaven Evasion Sect. He had already interrogated Ji Wuxia before and found out the approximate location of Heaven Evasion Sect. Ji Wuxia wanted him to go to Heaven Evasion Sect to seek revenge. Ji Tianqing was very clear that Heaven Evasion Sect was a hidden sect that had been passed down for thousands of years. Their strength was terrifying. Even the 3 ancient families of the Middle Continent couldn't compare to the Sky Evasion Sect. Perhaps only the imperial courts of the various clans could make Heaven Evasion Sect feel fear. Heaven Evasion Sect was a tiger's den. If he entered, he would most likely die. Even so, he did not hesitate to rush over. He had to save the little black dragon. Heaven Evasion Sect was about 300,000 miles south of the Sun-Moon Great Furnace. The sky over the sea was covered by endless white clouds. There were many scattered towering mountain ranges sitting in the vast sea of clouds. The entrance to Heaven Evasion Sect was in one of the mountain ranges in the sea of clouds. Ji Tianqing only used 8 hours to fly to that sea. He flew high into the sky and passed through the sea of clouds. His sharp eyes looked around. 100 miles ahead, there was a 10,000-foot tall mountain in the sea of clouds. It was completely black and there was a lush forest at the top of the mountain. That mountain was very steep and there were strange rocks on the mountain. It looked very ancient and gave off a mysterious aura. There were a few mountains scattered in the sea of clouds, but they were all very ordinary. They were not as majestic as that mountain. Ji Tianqing flew towards that mountain and asked Ji Wuxia, "Ji Wuxia, is the entrance to Heaven Evasion Sect on that mountain?" Ji Wuxia was probably tortured to the point of collapse or scared out of his wits. He did not dare to lie or hide anything. He weakly replied, "Yes, that is the Heaven Evasion Sect. There is a Big Dipper star formation on the mountain peak. It is the entrance to our sect." Ji Tianqing nodded expressionlessly and continued to ask, "What is the situation of the guards on the mountain peak? How do you open the Big Dipper star formation?" Ji Wuxia was silent for a while. He seemed to be hesitating and struggling. Ji Tianqing was about to form a soul blade to torture him when he was terrified. He quickly begged, "Ji Tianqing, stop. I will tell you. I will tell you everything. There are 9 guards on the mountain peak. They are all elite disciples of the Sky Origin stage. The leader of the guards is half a step away from the soul refining stage. As for the Big Dipper star formation, only the leader of the guards can open it." Before Ji Wuxia could finish, Ji Tianqing interrupted him and sneered, "Ji Wuxia, don't try to fool me with this nonsense. It's useless. You have no value to live anymore. You can die in peace." Ji Wuxia was shocked. He shouted in fear, "No. Ji Tianqing, you cannot kill me. If I die, you will never be able to enter our sect. You will never be able to save the Black Dragon. We can make a deal. I will tell you how to open the formation and how to find the left guardian without alerting anyone. I am the sixth elder of Heaven Evasion Sect. I know all the secrets of our sect. If you let me go, I will tell you everything. Let you go. Let you go and tell the others. How naive. Ji Tianqing curled his lips in disdain. Chapter 1278. Ji Wuxia had seen Ji Tianqing's terrifying capabilities and ruthless methods. In order to survive, he had no choice but to compromise. Even if he had to sell out the sect's secrets, he wouldn't hesitate. Of course, he was praying that Ji Tianqing would let him go so he could enter the Du Tian sect. The Du Tian sect was filled with powerful arrays that could make Ji Tianqing unable to hide. The experts in the sect would soon discover Ji Tianqing's tracks, and then blast him to smithereens. However, Ji Wuxia didn't think that Ji Tianqing was not only cruel, but also extremely confident. No need. I don't need your information. I can still kill my way into the Du Tian sect. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Tianqing grabbed Ji Wuxia's soul and squeezed it. Boom! A muffled sound rang out. Ji Wuxia's soul shattered on the spot, turning into a few pieces. Until he died, he still didn't understand why Ji Tianqing dared to kill him when he didn't even know how to activate the Big Dipper star array. Could it be that Ji Tianqing was so arrogant that he thought he could break the array and kill his way into the Du Tian sect? That was the Big Dipper star array, an array set up by the Du Tian sect's ancestor who was half a step away from the primordial spirit realm. Sadly, Ji Wuxia would never know the answer. With a heart full of resentment and doubt, he disappeared forever. Ji Tianqing placed Ji Wuxia's soul into the broken sword and gave it to the Burial of Heaven to consume. The Burial of Heaven was now a half-step divine weapon. Not only could it consume the soul crystals of beasts, it could also consume the souls of powerhouses. Though using these soul fragments to recover the energy of the Burial of Heaven was like throwing a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. But many a little makes a mickle, and it was better than nothing. The more soul fragments he devoured, the more benefits he would gain. After dealing with Ji Wuxia, Ji Tianqing held onto the broken sword with his left hand and took out an interspatial ring with his right hand. This storage ring belonged to Ji Wuxia. Previously, when he killed Ji Wuxia's fleshly body, he took this storage ring. After Ji Wuxia died, the soul imprint on the ring collapsed and it became an ownerless item. Ji Tianqing opened the spatial ring and saw that it was filled with mountains of spirit stones, pills, and materials. There were also many rare treasures. However, he wasn't interested in these treasures. After rummaging through his interspatial ring, he found a dark gold medallion. The token was simple and dignified, and there were golden dragons and cloud patterns carved all around it. On the front, there was the word Ji, and on the back, there were the words Heaven Evasion Sect. Without a doubt, this was Ji Wuxia's identity token. He held the token in his hand and stared coldly at Sky Mountain nearby. His lips curled into a cold smile. A moment later, he flew toward Mount Tian Shan with the token in his hand. He moved as fast as lightning, not hiding his tracks and aura at all. Shwa! In the blink of an eye, he was above Sky Mountain. Looking down on Sky Mountain, he saw the situation on the mountain. It was just as Ji Wuxia had said. The peak of the mountain was a flat land with a radius of 10 miles. There was an ancient mountain gate that was hundreds of meters tall. The pillars of the gate were carved with dragons and phoenixes. On the lintel of the gate were the words, Heaven Evasion Sect. It was majestic. On the empty ground inside the gate, there was a platform that was thousands of meters wide. It looked like an altar. This was the Big Dipper star array. It was made with 108,000 precious gems. It shone like the stars in the sky and emitted a powerful and mysterious aura. There was nothing inside the array. It was obvious that it hadn't been activated yet. 9 powerhouses in white robes were guarding around the array. They looked emotionless and didn't speak a word. Ji Tianqing looked over and saw that most of the 9 powerhouses were humans. There was even one of them from the Yao clan and 2 from the Aqua clan. Most of them were at the 5th level of the Sky Origin stage. The leader was at the half-step of the Soul Tempering stage. Shua! Ji Tianqing's body flashed and he descended from the sky. He landed in front of the gate. His face was filled with anxiety. His eyes were filled with worry as he ran towards the array. He looked like he was in a hurry. The white-robed powerhouses guarding the array immediately noticed him. Everyone was immediately alerted. Their eyes flashed as they looked at him. Clang! They pulled out their swords and sabers. Shwa shwa shwa. Everyone rushed over in a flash and surrounded him, blocking his way. Who is there? How dare you trespass on our Heaven Evasion Sect's mountain gate? How dare you? Stop right there. Otherwise, my sword will show no mercy. Many of the guards shouted coldly as they pointed their swords at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing showed no signs of fear. He took out the dark golden token and held it in his hand. With an anxious face, he shouted, "I'm Brother Ji's friend. I've been entrusted by him to deliver a message to your sect. Everyone, this matter concerns Brother Ji's life. It is extremely urgent. Please make an exception and let me pass." The white-robed guards heard his words and saw the dark gold token in his hand. They immediately let down their guard. Everyone looked at each other and put away their swords. The leader of the guards walked out from the crowd and stood in front of Ji Tianqing. He frowned and asked, "Who are you? Who is this Brother Ji you speak of?" Ji Tianqing pretended to be out of breath, looking tired and anxious as he said intermittently, "I'm a cultivator living in seclusion on Dark Star Island, and I'm a good friend of your honorable sect's 6th elder, Ji Wuxia. A few days ago, Brother Ji was chasing a woman in the ruins of End. However, he met with an accident and was heavily injured. He was in danger, so he gave me the token and asked me to come to your sect to ask for help." Hearing him say this, the guards came to a sudden realization, and the vigilance in their hearts disappeared. However, the leader of the guards was very cautious. He continued to ask, "Why didn't Elder Ji send a message? Why did he ask you to come and ask for help? Also, who is he asking for help from? Our sect has strict rules and outsiders are not allowed to enter easily. Who are you looking for?" Ji Tianqing had already thought of an excuse and answered without hesitation, "Brother Ji met with an accident and his physical body was destroyed." Where did he get the communication jade token from? Previously, when Brother Ji left the sect, he went with the left protector and 3rd elder. However, they separated and something happened. Brother Ji asked me to come to your sect to ask for help from the left protector. Please make an exception. When the leader of the guard saw that he could mention the left protector and 3rd elder, the guard in his heart was completely removed. After all, he saw with his own eyes that the left protector, 3rd elder and Ji Wuxia left together. A few days ago, the left protector and 3rd elder caught a flood dragon. However, Ji Wuxia was nowhere to be seen. Now that he heard him say this, the leader of the guards understood the situation and hurriedly nodded. "Sir, I am impressed by your help. I will get the guards to activate the array now. Please wait for a moment." With that, the leader of the guards gave an order to the guards. A few white-robed guards immediately joined forces to cast a spell and activated the array with a special method. Chapter 1279. After about 100 breaths of time, the 9 white-robed guards opened the Big Dipper star array. The 10-meter-tall altar lit up with a dazzling silver light, condensing into an oval-shaped door of light. This door of light was the portal that connected the Du Tian sect to the outside world. The Du Tian sect was located in an alternate dimension, or rather, a barrier. It was very hidden and safe. In the past 2 to 3,000 years, no matter if it was the demons or beasts of the returning ruins or the experts of other races, none of them had been able to invade the Du Tian sect. The captain of the guards bowed at Ji Tianqing and made a "please" gesture when he saw the teleportation portal was opened. "Sir, please enter." "Many thanks." Ji Tianqing nodded and immediately flew into the portal of light. Whoosh! With a flash of light, his body was swallowed by the white light and the portal quickly disappeared. In the next moment, Ji Tianqing entered a barrier, and his feet landed on a soft grassland. He stood on the grass and looked around expressionlessly, observing the situation. He saw that he was surrounded by grass with a radius of 10 miles. Behind him was a circular array made of jade. There were 9 stone pillars in the array. 10 miles in front of him was a lush forest. After a few dozen miles of forest, there was a clear lake nestled at the foot of a majestic mountain range. This was a majestic mountain range that was 1,000 miles long and stretched from north to south. It was like a dragon lying on the ground. The mountain range was filled with dense forest and dense spirit qi. There were several peaks that were thousands of feet tall. On those peaks, one could faintly see some houses and palaces made of gold and red bricks. They shined brightly under the sunlight. It was clear that the Du Tian sect's barrier was very similar to the Shao clan's barrier. They were both small worlds with a radius of a few thousand miles. Not only was this place isolated from the outside world, but the spirit qi here was also very dense. It was very suitable for cultivation. The mountain range in front of him was where the sect was located. On the highest peak, there was a dazzling palace. It should be the Du Tian sect's main palace. Ji Tianqing had learned about the Du Tian sect before and knew that it was a hidden sect that had existed for more than 2,000 years. However, this sect had always been mysterious and low-key. No one knew about it. Ji Tianqing flew into the sky, crossed the grassland, and flew towards the mountain range in front of him. At this moment, Burial of Heaven's voice sounded in his mind, "Tianqing, you don't know much about the Heaven sect. Do you still plan on barging in?" Ji Tianqing said through his soul, "Although the Heaven Vanishing sect is mysterious, I've asked around before and managed to get some information out of Ji Wuxia. There weren't many disciples in the sect, only 200 or 300 of them. However, they were all talented geniuses. Most of them were at the sky origin stage. As for soul refinement realm cultivators, it was said that there were more than a dozen of them. They were either chief disciples, deacons, or elders with real authority. The strongest people in the sect should be the left and right protectors, the sect leader, and the grand supreme elder with the highest status. However, there is one thing that I can be sure of. There is no primordial soul realm expert in the Heaven Ascension sect." Burial of Heaven pondered for a moment before saying in a serious tone, "With your current strength and methods, as long as you don't meet a primordial soul realm expert, your life won't be in danger. However, there are many experts in the Heaven Vanishing sect. It will still be very dangerous for you to barge in. Moreover, you didn't come here to destroy the Heaven Vanishing sect, but to save the little black dragon." Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, "I know all this." Burial of Heaven, do you have any good suggestions? Burial of Heaven said calmly, "You have 2 choices. You can charge in and start a massacre in the Heaven Vanishing sect to force them to hand over the little black dragon. Alternatively, you can hide and investigate the little black dragon first before acting according to the circumstances." Ji Tianqing said without hesitation, "The people of the Heaven Vanishing sect aren't stupid. They must have seen that the little black dragon is a divine beast black dragon. That's why they tried so hard to steal it. There hasn't been a divine dragon in the past 10,000 years on the continent. Since they got it, how could they hand it over? For the sake of the little black dragon's safety, I have to sneak in and find it first." However, before he could finish speaking, a cold yell rang out from the sky behind him. "Stop!" Ji Tianqing's body trembled. He hurriedly stopped and looked behind him. In the sky 10 miles away, there was a thin young man in a white robe flying over at lightning speed. He was around 30 years old. He had a dignified appearance and was quite powerful. He held a treasured sword and gave off a cold aura. His eyes contained a sliver of malice. Clearly, he was not a kind person. Ji Tianqing studied him a few times. His expression did not change, but he guessed at this person's identity. He should be an elite disciple of the Heaven Vanishing sect. After all, this person was at the 6th layer of the Heaven's origin stage. The white-robed young man arrived before him. He placed his hand on the hilt of his sword and stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. He barked, "Who are you? Why have you barged into our sect? What are you trying to do?" Ji Tianqing was not angered. He said expressionlessly, "I am a cultivator from Dark Star Island. I am a friend of your sect's elder, Ji Wuxia. I have come to deliver a message." "A cultivator from Dark Star Island? You're a friend of my master." The white-robed young man immediately frowned. He said warily, "Why haven't I heard of Dark Star Island? What's your name? Since when did my master have a friend like you?" As he spoke, the white-robed young man drew his treasured sword and pointed it at Ji Tianqing's throat. He barked, "Speak. Who are you?" Seeing this, Ji Tianqing cursed inwardly, "This is bad. My luck is too bad. I've actually met Ji Wuxia's disciple." Seeing that he was about to be exposed, he hurriedly took out Ji Wuxia's identity medallion and waved it in front of the white-robed young man. "Little brother, it's great that your brother Ji's disciple. Something big has happened to your master and he's on the brink of death. I've been entrusted by him to seek help from your sect." Ji Tianqing pretended to be overjoyed and no one could find fault with it. Indeed, the white-robed young man hesitated. He asked worriedly, "What happened? What's wrong with my master?" Seeing that he had taken the bait, Ji Tianqing revealed a solemn expression and said in a deep voice, "Little brother, this is not the place to talk. Can we talk somewhere else?" As he said that, he wanted to pull the white-robed young man to a secluded corner. However, what he did not expect was that the white-robed young man was filled with wariness. He broke free from Su Zimo's grasp and shouted angrily, "You're just pretending to be mysterious. You must be up to no good. If you're really my master's friend, follow me to the meeting hall now and explain it to the elders." Seeing how cautious the white-robed young man was, Ji Tianqing turned to observe the surroundings. Seeing that there was no one around, he looked coldly at the white-robed young man and smirked. Chapter 1280. What did you say? The white-robed youth clearly didn't react in time and was stunned. At this moment, Ji Tianqing released a formless spiritual shockwave that blasted towards the white-robed youth's head. There was a buzzing sound in the soul. The white-robed youth's soul was immediately knocked out and his eyes closed. He didn't even see Ji Tianqing make a move and didn't even know how he fainted. Swish! The white-robed young man fell straight down, crashing into the grass below from the air. Ji Tianqing was already prepared. He grabbed the youth's collar and dragged him into the grass, disappearing immediately. The grass and the sky were silent as if nothing had happened. A quarter of an hour later, the white-robed young man drilled out of a dense forest. There was no one around and no one noticed his appearance. Furthermore, no one would know that the current him was no longer the same as before. He stood at the edge of the forest and looked at the distant mountains and palaces. His lips curled into a playful smile as he muttered to himself, "This is really a pillow given when I'm sleepy. Things are much easier now." Li Chang, Ji Wuxia's last disciple, 32 years old, 6th level of the Sky Origin stage. This identity should be able to help me find the little black dragon quickly, right? Without a doubt, this white-robed youth's body had already been possessed by Ji Tianqing. He knocked Li Chang unconscious and dragged him underground. After interrogating him for some basic information, he killed Li Chang. Then, he hid his true body in the sword world and his soul entered Li Chang's body, transforming him into Li Chang. Only experts at the 8th or 9th level of the spirit refinement stage could see that there was something wrong with his soul. Apart from that, no one could tell if he was real or fake. Swish! Ji Tianqing flew into the sky with a treasured sword in his hand and flew towards the mountain range in the distance. Although Li Chang was an inner disciple, he was also Ji Wuxia's last disciple and usually lived in the Heaven's Fate courtyard. That was Ji Wuxia's residence. Li Chang lived there because he was doted on by Ji Wuxia and also because it was convenient for him to cultivate and seek guidance. The divination courtyard was located in the southeast, on a mountain peak filled with blue trees. Ji Tianqing was in no hurry to rush to the heavenly fate court. He flew above the mountain range and stopped for a moment to observe the situation below. There were a total of 7 mountains in the majestic and verdant mountain range. Every mountain peak was a place where spiritual energy gathered. There were houses and courtyards built on the mountain peaks, as well as magnificent palaces. Of the 7 peaks, the one in the middle was the highest and was the main peak. It was where the Heaven Evasion sect's main palace was located. Behind the mountain range was a vast and boundless forest. The surroundings were enveloped by a soul-grade grand formation, and it was isolated from the outside world. Ji Tianqing could vaguely see that there were huge demonic beasts moving about in the vast forest. It was clear that the forest was where the Heaven Ascension sect raised their demonic beasts. The left protector and third elder captured the little black dragon. Will they imprison it in that forest? Ji Tianqing could not help but have this thought in his mind. However, he silently used his spiritual energy to search for the little black dragon's aura, but he found nothing. I can sense the little black dragon's spiritual energy from 200 li away. It seems that the little black dragon is probably not in this mountain range. Ji Tianqing thought to himself as he turned and flew toward the 6th mountain peak. Whoosh! 15 minutes later, he arrived at the peak filled with blue trees and landed in the plaza at the peak. There were several azure-robed disciples practicing their swordsmanship on the plaza. When they saw him arrive, they hurriedly stopped their practice and respectfully bowed. Greetings, Senior Brother Li. Ji Tianqing didn't pay any attention to them. He looked straight ahead and walked through the square, heading towards the majestic Heaven's secret courtyard. The divination courtyard was very large. There were 3 palaces, 6 halls, and 4 side courtyards. Those who were not familiar with the terrain would be confused and lose their sense of direction. Ji Tianqing expressionlessly passed through the courtyards, halls, and corridors toward Li Chang's residence. Along the way, many young disciples, servants, and maids respectfully bowed to him. However, he did not respond, nor did he speak. Fortunately, Li Chang was usually more indifferent, and his temperament was ruthless and cold. Those disciples and maids all feared him and wanted to avoid him. Naturally, no one noticed his abnormality. After Ji Tianqing returned to Li Chang's residence, he locked himself in his study and quickly flipped through the books. If he wanted to quickly understand the Heaven Evasion sect, reading was the best choice. If he asked others, he would arouse suspicion and risk exposing his identity. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. When Ji Tianqing left the study, night had already fallen and the lanterns had been lit. He had read for an entire afternoon and finally understood the information he wanted. He had a clear understanding of the Heaven Evasion sect. While there was no one around, he silently left the divination courtyard and headed toward the main peak of the Heaven Evasion sect. His target was the left protector. The little black dragon was most likely in the hands of the left protector. The left protector's residence was in the left palace of the main peak. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing arrived at the main peak and stopped in the night sky. Under the night sky, the dozen or so palaces and residences of the main peak were all brightly lit. There were very few people walking around the various residences and palaces. It was very quiet. However, Ji Tianqing used his soul to investigate and found that there were sentries all around. There were at least several dozen elite guards. He landed in the square in front of the palace and swaggered toward the palace on the left. When he arrived at the entrance of the left palace, he was blocked by 6 guards. Halt! This is the left protector's residence. You are not allowed to trespass. Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly, I am Elder Ji's last disciple, Li Chang. I have come to visit the left protector tonight and ask about my master. Please inform her. The leader of the guards looked at him and said in a deep voice, You brat, you came here yesterday and I told you that the left protector is not in the palace. You still dare to come here? Ji Tianqing frowned slightly and cursed in his heart, Li Chang, you little bastard. You are really ruining my plans. He looked at the guard expressionlessly and said stubbornly, My master and the left protector left the sect together to run some errands. They haven't returned yet. I am worried about my master's safety. So what if I come here every day to ask? Where is the left protector? No matter what, I want to see her tonight. Seeing that his attitude was so firm and even a little tough, the guard was stunned for a moment. He then sneered, You really don't know what's good for you. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. The left protector is in our sect's forbidden area, the floating mountain. He is discussing important matters with the elders. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. If you have the guts, then go to the forbidden area. When the time comes, the guards guarding the forbidden area will definitely cut you into pieces. Ji Tianqing glanced at him coldly. He didn't say anything else and turned to leave. He didn't return to the Tianji court. Instead, he flew into the sky and rushed to the forbidden area, the floating mountain. Chapter 1281. Ji Tianqing ignored the guards and did not waste any time. He flew straight to the floating mountain. He had read the books in the study before and had some understanding of the floating mountain. It was one of the forbidden grounds of the Heaven Evasion sect. It was located 800 li north of the mountain range, deep within the barrier. According to the books, the floating mountain was naturally formed and had a history of several thousand years. Over 2,000 years ago, when the founding ancestor of the Heaven Evasion sect had chosen this location, the floating mountain had already existed. No one knew why the 1,000-meter-tall mountain was floating in the sky, shrouded by white clouds and thick fog. However, the floating mountain contained a mysterious energy that was extremely beneficial to cultivation. It had always been the place where the Heaven Evasion sect master and enforcers cultivated in seclusion. It was said that there were experts overseeing the floating mountain, as well as many elite experts guarding it. There were also ferocious mutated beasts residing there. The ordinary disciples, deacons, and elders of the sect did not dare to approach the floating mountain, or else they would be severely punished. Ji Tianqing had disguised himself as Ji Wuxia's disciple Li Chang, but he did not have the right to set foot on the floating mountain. If he was discovered, he would only be punished. However, he only wanted to save the little black dragon in the shortest amount of time possible. How could he care about anything else? His figure merged into the night and silently tore through the curtain of night, flying as fast as lightning toward the floating mountain. On the way, he passed by a forest several hundred li wide and looked down at the tamed monsters. He silently used a technique to sense the little black dragon's aura, searching for traces of it. Not long after, he crossed the forest and continued to fly toward the floating mountain. What he could be sure of was that the little black dragon was not in that forest. After the left enforcer captured the little black dragon, he has not been in the left palace these past few days and has been hiding in the floating mountain. It seems that the little black dragon is very likely imprisoned in the floating mountain. He silently speculated, the little black dragon definitely won't submit so easily. The Heaven Evasion sect won't be able to tame it that easily. Moreover, it is a divine beast black dragon. The Heaven Evasion sect will definitely not be willing to kill it. He could only be sure that the little black dragon's life was not in danger for now. About a quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing flew into the vast mountains. Under the veil of night, numerous mountains that were 3 kilometers tall stood towering in all directions. They were like countless enormous beasts that were waiting to devour a man, and they lay dormant in the darkness. In the center of the dozens of mountain peaks, in the sky, thousands of feet above the ground, floated a 1,000 feet tall mountain. Even though it was a night with a bright moon and few stars, the area around the mountain was covered with white clouds and fog, shrouding half of the mountain. The mountain was steep, and there were cliffs everywhere, dotted with dark green trees. Ji Tianqing raised his head and looked up. He saw that halfway up the mountain, there were dots of lights, and he could vaguely see people walking around. Several ancient palaces had been built on top of the mountain. They were magnificent and had a domineering aura that could suppress the heavens and the earth. However, it was dark inside the palace, with only a few scattered lights shining weakly. Ji Tianqing retracted his aura and quietly approached the floating mountain, constantly observing the surroundings. He was like a ghost, blending into the night. Even if someone flew past him, they might not be able to detect him. 100 breaths of time later, he arrived at the base of the floating mountain, hiding in the white clouds and fog. He used his soul to investigate and found that the entire floating mountain was protected by an invisible formation. Once an external force came into contact with the formation, it would light up, alarming the guards and experts on the mountain. It really is a forbidden ground of the Heaven Evasion sect. The defenses are so tight. The formation protecting the floating mountain is actually a mid-grade soul-level formation. Ji Tianqing observed for a while and couldn't help but frown. To him, breaking through a mid-grade soul-level formation was not difficult. The difficult part was not alarming anyone. He slowly flew around the base of the mountain, carefully observing the situation. An hour later, he flew a circle around the floating mountain, clearly observing the situation on the mountain. From the middle of the mountain to the top, there were over 30 sentry posts. Over 100 Sky Origin stage guards were patrolling in a regular pattern. The palace at the top of the mountain seemed to be silent and no one was moving, but there were fluctuations of soul refinement realm cultivators. Ji Tianqing circled to the back of the floating mountain and hid under a hidden cliff. He secretly released his soul to investigate the method to break the defensive formation. Half an hour later, he had a rough idea of how to break the formation, but he was not in a hurry to act. Half an hour later, a group of armored guards with swords flew past him, unhurriedly flying away. When the group of guards disappeared into the night, he immediately released his soul and began to break the defensive formation. Half an hour later, another group of patrolling guards flew over from afar, about to pass above Ji Tianqing's head. At this time, Ji Tianqing successfully broke the formation, breaking a hole in it, and his figure flashed into it. The next moment, the formation closed by itself, and he was already inside the floating mountain. Throughout the entire process, he did not alarm anyone, including the patrolling guards not far away. By the time the patrolling guards flew past this area, Ji Tianqing had already disappeared into the darkness, silently rushing towards the mountain peak. In a short incense stick's worth of time, he had searched the entire mountain peak. The 5 palaces on the mountain peak had several hundred rooms of various sizes. He had used his soul to investigate them all. The result was indisputable. The little black dragon was not on the mountain peak. He hid in the corner of one of the palaces, frowning as he pondered, "I just used a secret technique to investigate. The little black dragon's aura is nearby. But it's not on this mountain peak. Could it be inside the floating mountain?" When he thought of this, he was about to use an earth movement technique to drill into the mountain and search carefully. But at this time, something strange happened. Whoosh! A dazzling sword light suddenly shot out from the night sky, stabbing straight at Ji Tianqing's head. The blazing white sword light contained vast soul energy and was extraordinarily powerful. Ji Tianqing did not think too much about it. He subconsciously raised his right hand and slapped out. Bang! With a muffled boom, the 1-foot-long soul sword light was pulverized by his slap. His palm was unscathed, but his body found it difficult to endure the massive impact and was forced back 3 steps. Ji Tianqing grimaced, his eyes flashing with cold light. Oh no, I've been discovered. Only now did he recall that in one of the palaces on the mountain peak, a soul refinement realm expert was hibernating in seclusion. When I was searching for the little black dragon, I must have alarmed that soul refinement realm expert. As this thought flashed through his mind, another white light shot out from the night sky. Whoosh! The white light tore through the night sky and instantly landed on a roof 100 feet in front of him. When the white light scattered, a tall and muscular figure appeared. This was a middle-aged man dressed in purple robes, 2 meters tall, and with a dignified face. This person had an extraordinary bearing, his eyes flashing with an intimidating light, and his body exuded a noble and powerful domineering aura. Chapter 1282. The purple-robed man shouted angrily as he stared at Ji Tianqing. You were able to take one of my attacks. You are definitely not a disciple of the house. As he spoke, he released a formless spiritual energy, which swept towards Ji Tianqing like raging waves. In the blink of an eye, the purple-robed man sensed that Ji Tianqing's spiritual energy was in the 5th level of the spirit realm. The purple-robed man's expression changed and he sneered, what kind of coward dares to pretend to be a disciple of the house and sneak into our forbidden area? Ji Tianqing knew that his identity had been exposed and he could no longer pretend. He decided to just stay silent and didn't try to explain himself. He saw this person's face and knew that this person was in the 7th level of the spirit realm. He was certain that this person was the right protector. Without any hesitation, he pulled out his broken sword and attacked the right protector. Whoosh! The moment the broken sword came out, a 20-meter-long ray of white light shot out. It carried with it the power to destroy everything. It pierced through the night sky and arrived before the right protector. The right protector was not prepared for this. Ji Tianqing was so ruthless that he attacked without a word. Plus, this attack was so aggressive, the sword ray was so blinding, and the power was so shocking. His expression changed as he stared angrily. His eyes flashed with shock and surprise. At this critical moment, he had no time to dodge. He could only use his spiritual energy to create a shield to protect himself. Boom! After a muffled explosion, the sword ray broke through the right protector's shield and sent him flying. While he was still in midair, he spat out a mouthful of blood and let out a muffled scream. Boom! The protector of the right crashed into the palace wall 1,000 feet away with a violent force. The thick vermilion palace wall collapsed on the spot, splashing dirt and rocks all over the sky. However, he was a cultivator in the 7th level of the spirit realm after all. In a flash, he charged out from the rubble. Whoosh! In a flash of white light, the right protector flew into the night sky and a dark red sword appeared in his right hand. He looked down at his chest and saw that his purple robe was in tatters. There was a hole in it. Inside the hole, the black soft armor was broken as well, revealing a chopstick-long wound. It was so deep that his bones could be seen. The sword was only 2 inches away from piercing through his heart. The right protector was both shocked and furious. He stared at Ji Tianqing with his eyes wide open and his body was filled with murderous intent. You damned beast! Who are you? How dare you attack my house? Are you tired of living? It was obvious that the sky protector of the Eastern Sea ruins for the past 2,000 years had a deep foundation. The right protector was used to living like a prince. He couldn't imagine that someone would dare to sneak into the Heaven Evasion sect and attack him. Because of his carelessness, he was injured by Ji Tutu to attack to kill him. His angry roar exploded in the night sky, like rolling thunder, and immediately spread to the peak of the mountain. The guards who were patrolling nearby were immediately alerted and rushed over with a swish sound. Ji Tianqing knew that his identity had been exposed and that there would be a fierce battle tonight, so he decided to go all out and start a massacre. He stared at the right protector expressionlessly. He waved the broken sword in his right hand again and stabbed forward. Die! As he uttered these cold words, the broken sword pierced out a cold light that was condensed to the extreme, flashing and disappearing in a flash. The right protector was on high alert as if he was facing a great enemy. However, he couldn't understand this sword technique at all. He could only hold the sword in front of his chest and form a shield again. In the next moment, the cold light that had been condensed to its limits suddenly exploded at his waist. Boom! With a muffled sound, the right protector's lower body exploded into pieces of flesh and blood that flew in all directions. He didn't know what happened at all. He had lost his legs and feet and was only left with the upper half of his body. His face was filled with fear and shock as he fled into the distance in a panic. A dignified expert at the 7th level of the soul-refining realm couldn't even block one of Ji Tianqing's moves. Ji Tianqing had only used 2 swords to severely injure the right protector, leaving him with only half his body. What kind of terrifying strength was this? The right protector had never met such a terrifying expert before. Of course he was shocked and angry, overwhelmed with shock. Ji Tianqing subconsciously flew into the night sky and chased after him with the broken sword. But at this moment, a mournful howl could be heard from the hanging mountain beneath his feet. Roar! Ji Tianqing immediately heard it clearly. It was the cry of a dragon. He was not unfamiliar with this sound. He immediately recognized that it was the little black dragon's voice. The little black dragon is really inside the mountain. This thought flashed through his mind. He immediately gave up on chasing the right protector and turned into a golden light, burrowing into the ground and flying into the mountain. After 2 breaths, more than 10 elite guards rushed to the scene in a hurry. They were filled with anxiety as they searched the surroundings. However, Ji Tianqing and the right protector had already left. The scene was empty, only a pile of broken walls and rubble remained. The guards didn't know what was going on. They could only send out warning signals that an assassin had invaded. In the floating mountain, there was a massive cave. The cave was 1,000 meters wide and was oval like an egg. There were traces of man-made excavation on the walls and many pearls and gems were embedded in them. There was also a powerful defensive array. The ceiling of the cave was densely packed with gems, shining with multicolored splendor that illuminated the entire cave. In the center of the cave, there was a circular altar that was 10 feet tall. The altar was 1,000 feet wide and was surrounded by 18 black stone pillars, carved with images of ancient beasts and gods. At this moment, 6 experts in purple robes were standing around the altar. They were waving their palms, sending out beams of light as they used all their strength to unleash magic arts. The mysterious array was activated, and a light shield with a radius of 100 zhang lit up, covering the entire altar. The 18 stone pillars in the surroundings all shone with dazzling multicolored light, releasing streams of flames that were as thick as buckets. More than 60 pillars of flame extended to the center of the altar like chains of flame, firmly binding a black serpent dragon. It was the little black dragon. Its 1,000-meter-long body had shrunk to only 100 meters long. It was in a very miserable state. Its body was covered in wounds and holes. One could clearly see its dragon bones, which were still dripping with dark red blood. More than 60 flaming chains bound its body, neck, tail, and claws. It could only lie on the altar, unable to move at all. The 6 powerhouses activated the formation and unleashed an incomparably violent power that ruthlessly suppressed it, violently destroying its body and soul. It was in so much pain that even a scream was an extravagant hope. Of the 6 experts, the leader was the left protector. He had a sinister smile on his face as he coldly stared at the little black dragon. He shouted, "You evil dragon, do you still think you can escape after coming to our sect? Dream on. You're tuning into the Han Lee's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.